So recently on Twitter, there was a hashtag trending called "Say No to Streaming."
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, what is this? And I clicked it, and there was this, as usual, massive Twitter fight going on. Some people were saying this is just hard labor, basically just streaming nonstop to get your favorite band's song on the charts, right?
Yeah.
Just turning on your laptop all night, like refreshing songs all night. That's just pure labor. And some people were saying you don't have to do all this to be a real fan.
Right.
And some of the rebuttals were like, oh, I didn't know you thought of it as labor. I actually do this because I love them, implying that your love is fake, right? You're a fake fan, right?
It's a good retort.
Right? That means, yeah, like that was labor to you? Which I think I do see both sides, but I think also something very interesting is that, I don't know, like proving that you're loyal. I feel like a lot of the times it also usually falls on women, female fans. And I think just expecting free labor based on love, it's a burden that often falls on women, not just on K-pop fans, but like just in society in general. So I thought that was really interesting.
So there's like a pink tax angle on there.
Yeah, that's my angle, pink tax.
Okay. I'd not even considered that. That's why this is an interesting conversation. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Korea Deconstructed podcast. Here for the second time is Hanyang. She's a graduate from Yonsei University in political science. She now writes for the JoongAng Daily, covering Hallyu, K-pop, society, culture. And I like her work. I like what she writes. I like the way she presents stuff. I like how she communicates ideas. I've been trying to persuade her to start doing some video essays to get her content out there a little bit more, to get more of her own voice out into Korean society, because I think it resonates. And I think we could all do a little bit more to listen to other people. You might notice as the podcast goes forward that there'll be a range of different people coming on. I started this to speak to Korean people about Korea. Hanyang certainly fits that bill. But the guests might start getting a bit more varied as I pursue people that have something to say. So I hope you'll continue being patient and supporting me in that and listening to the various people that I find. I want to start with this question that you're probably not prepared for, and I think it might make you a little bit uncomfortable. But I use a lot of your work in my lectures on Hallyu and K-pop. So when I'm teaching undergrads and Korean students from around the world, I use a lot of your stuff, and I'll tell you why. It's because a lot of academic work is just too clever for its own good sometimes. Do you know what I mean? It's good, but it's making all these arguments, and it's like it's just too clever for its own good. It's like, be simpler. And then you also get a lot of work that's in the public or in media, and it's just basically gukbong. It's just basically, way, K-pop is so amazing. Look at all this. But what I find with you is you seem to be able to address complex issues on K-pop and Korean culture more broadly, but do it with language that's simple. And also you're not afraid to throw shade when necessary, and you're not afraid to give love when necessary, because you need both. And I find that kind of unique. I know there's probably other people out there doing it, but certainly with your work, I found it really valuable when I'm trying to communicate certain ideas about K-pop. And so I use that. So what's your take on my assessment of your work, or on other people, how this is going, what you do in this sphere? Did
you use my recent one with New Jeans and their mental psych ward aesthetic?
No, because we're in kind of semester break.
Oh, okay.
But I will be, I'm sure.
Yeah. Actually, I did meet someone that I also connected through work, Korean American, and told me, she was kind of careful to ask me, like, do you really like K-pop? Because based on what I read from your work, I don't know if you hate K-pop or love K-pop, like, right? Yeah. It looks like it could be someone who just hates the genre, or like someone who loves the genre. I think I've been like on both sides, and I also love looking at the socio-political angle of cultural stuff, because I majored in political science. I feel like I find something to pick fights at. So I think maybe that's why I get to write some stuff that throws shade a lot. Yeah. Throwing shade is fun in
No,
writing.
it is fun, and I think I probably throw shade. I come at it normally from a music angle. You know, I listen to the music, and somebody asked me the other day. I don't know if you'll listen to this. Isaac, he asked me, David, what's your favorite K-pop group? And I'm like, well, I like this song by Taemin. I like this song by Lee Soo-hyun. I like this song by Big Bang.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I like songs. There's music in there that I really like, and I think these are jams, man. I put these on in the car and sing them with the kids. But I think that's perhaps different from the way some other people access K-pop.
Yeah, I mean, the meaning of fans changed so dramatically. Like, I'm actually working on a piece right now. Back in the day, when you called yourself a fan of someone, it used to be like a song comes out on the radio. I love this song. I'm a fan of someone. And now, even buying albums isn't enough, apparently. Like, you have to at least have been to their concert, and like some people are you really a fan if you haven't, like, I don't know, trespassed into their dormitory, right?
Yeah.
For me, my standard of being a fan was I listened to their B-side tracks and enjoy them, because most of the public barely even know their title tracks. But when I said that to like real, like, harder fans, they actually like started genuinely laughing. Like, listening to the tracks is not enough. You have to at least collect their albums, collect photo cards, maybe go to their concerts, know about like their personal information, their like relationship with each other presented on their reality shows, stuff like that. So yeah, there's levels to it.
It's performative, isn't it? You have to perform the fandom, I think, as well. It's not just about actually liking stuff in K-pop. You have to stream, you have to purchase, you have to turn up, you have to be there,
Like,
you have
prove
to
your love.
You have to prove your love, and there's that level of fandom, which is how much you perform. It's absolute, and there's all these questions, I think, on it about like Marxist division of labor. You know, the entertainment companies just sit back, and it's just the fans.
Yeah, that's what I'm actually precisely working on.
Oh, okay. Tell me about it.
So recently on Twitter, there was a hashtag trending called "Say No to Streaming."
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, what is this? And I clicked it, and there was this, as usual, massive Twitter fight going on. Some people were saying this is just hard labor, basically just streaming nonstop to get your favorite band's song on the charts, right?
Yeah.
Just turning on your laptop all night, like refreshing songs all night. That's just pure labor. And some people were saying you don't have to do all this to be a real fan.
Right.
And some of the rebuttals were like, oh, I didn't know you thought of it as labor. I actually do this because I love them, implying that your love is fake, right? You're a fake fan, right?
It's a good retort.
Right? I mean, yeah, like that was labor to you, which I think I do see both sides. But I think also something very interesting is that, I don't know, like performing, proving that you're loyal. I feel like a lot of the times it also usually falls on women, female fans. And I think just expecting free labor based on love, it's a burden that often falls on women, not just on K-pop fans, but like just in society in general. So I thought that was really interesting.
So there's like a pink tax angle on there.
Yeah,
I guess.
that's my angle, pink tax.
Okay. I'd not even considered that. That's why this is an interesting conversation, I guess.
Right, but also I think women also share some of the responsibility, because it's usually women shaming other women, right, to like prove their love. You also see mothers shaming other mothers, like you're not like doing what's best for your child. And there's also something going on, like they're kind of reproducing the pressure from society and like forcing it to each other. Like if you really love this band, it shouldn't feel like labor to you.
But it does seem like labor, and it feels like people, and that's before you even, I guess, get into the environmental aspects of it, of having like 4 or 5 devices just going nonstop to get this, just to get a song in the news, because it's come to the stage, I think, where if a song hasn't beaten the rivals, if a song hasn't got X amount of views in 24 hours or 1 week, then it's perceived as not a good song. And I just think that's not the case, because a lot of the time the songs that are getting those numbers, I don't think they're good songs.
Right, and the brutal truth is that you can do that all you want and get it onto the top 100 of the Melon chart for a brief second. No one in the public knows that song, right? Right. So like a lot of people think they do it to make their artist proud. If they don't make it onto the charts, they're gonna lose face or some sort like that. But like at this rate, no one in the public's actually listening to those songs anyway. So like you might as well just enjoy it like as much as you're comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about enjoying. And so many of my international students, they're confused when they come here that not everybody's listening to the K-pop. Like, they'll ask their Korean classmates or friends, like, what K-pop are you into? And the Koreans like, no, there is that really big difference. I feel like we've started by throwing shade a bit more quickly than I anticipated. But let's see where it goes. I want to ask you, just to set the scene about K-pop in 2022, because we're January, we're at the start of a new year. And if you look back at last year, was it a good year? Was it a bad year? What were the big stories? What was, what's Hanyang's summation of K-pop in 2022?
I think it was an okay year in terms of there was no major like bullying scandal that just completely like terrorized the industry. Seeing a bunch of people gone.
No bullying, no date rape, I guess. This is an improvement.
Yeah, except toward the end of the year, there was obviously the Omega X thing that also exposed some ugly things. But apart from that, I think a lot of them showed a lot of commercial success. Many of them renewed their contracts with their agencies so they could we're expecting a longer career from them. I think Twice did it.
Yeah.
Monsta X, one of them didn't, but they're still active. Like this week, they came back with a new release. What are some other groups that re-signed?
I mean, there was all this talk last year, and I'll show how little I know, but 21 came back and did something at Coachella, didn't they? And Girls' Generation seemed to be back in the news. There were all these groups that you thought were, old and gone, but they seem to be coming back.
GOT7. All of them are under different agencies, but they came together. So I think there were, like, in general, I think I remember a lot of more wholesome moments from 2022. Maybe it was because it was closer, but trying to compare in my head in 2021, there were some wild things. There were accusations of, like, someone cheating with 5 women, obviously bullying, well into the summer. Yeah. I mean, well, that actually reminds me of the Kim Garam scandal from Le Sserafim. Yeah.
She left the group, didn't she?
She left the group.
That was so, I mean...
That was a weird moment that everyone forgot about because now Le Sserafim just didn't take a hit at all, right?
Right. Well, they just disposed of her and moved on, which I thought was because it was just after their first song. Like they were just getting... This was... I'm going to get many things wrong, so correct me, but they were that was big hits...
Yeah,
girl group, the first girl group. Yeah, now Hype, sorry. But that was their first girl group, and it was this big thing. And just after one song, I think it was, that dun, da, 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 dun, dun, that one, whatever it is, she's gone.
And the funny thing is...
I felt sorry for her, actually.
I'm still disturbed by it. I just... Something doesn't sit right with me that this huge corporation just basically... like disposed this 15 16-year-old girl, and now her face is known to the entire public because the girl group itself was successful. And a big reason behind like the hate towards her is that the company just unreasonably defended her and like came out with these statements that basically shifted blame on the potential victim, stuff like that. A big part of the hate was not really what she did because she was just silent the whole time. A lot of them had to do with their PR department's statements, how aggressive they sounded. Yeah, and I didn't know what the future would be like for them, but I didn't know she would be suddenly discarded like 2 months in between their releases, and now her face was all over national news. She was a 16-year-old girl basically getting mocked on the national level. So I don't know what to feel about that. She could be, I mean, theoretically, let's say she is the biggest bully in history, but she's also a 16-year-old girl. Yeah.
Be careful of the table. Notice from Jack Greenberg with that banging that. Yeah. Is that part of a broader... Is that global? Is that Korean? Because there is this thing, and it seems to be related to bullying in particular, that if you get accusations of bullying in South Korea, and these accusations will come out, and I'm not defending bullies here, but some of the accusations will come out like 10 years ago this person did this, and there's a demand that they be removed from media. They suffer financially, psychologically. It feels like another form of bullying in a sense.
I mean, the people are basically going toward them to do the bullying, right? let's say cyberbullying is a bad thing. Like you shouldn't insult them online and like bombard them with hate messages. And someone was accused of cyberbullying. People flock there to cyberbully them.
Yeah, it is what it is. Le Seraphim, their first EP, I thought, I mean, I reviewed it in the press because I thought musically it was kind of interesting. It had all this kind of techno and weird stuff. I sent it to a couple of my mates who know nothing about K-pop. I was like, what genre is this? And they were like, that's techno.
No, it was an Apple commercial. The genre was an Apple.
Well, yeah, that's something else. But they seem to have survived that quite well. There seems to be groups like New Jeans seem to be doing it. The Seraphim seem to be doing it.
Yeah.
Things come their way and they just like defend it all, keep going and get even bigger.
Right. And also I'm noticing how both of the groups' PR is just so aggressive. Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to do it. Just hit back.
I think it's working so far. It's just they're controversial, but it's in a way that helps them.
Yeah. Shall we talk about New Jeans a little bit?
Yeah.
Because they seem to be the biggest thing at the moment. They seem to be getting success and controversy. Their songs get stuck in my head, I must admit. Like, whether it was Attention, I used to like that, and now that, oh my God. Like, if I hear it once, it's just there for the whole day.
Can I admit something?
Yeah.
I've never listened to a New Jeans song from like start to finish in a sitting because
Sure.
I couldn't. I get the appeal of them, but I also don't. Can I say overly polished? Which
Yeah.
might be ironic because all K-pop groups seem overly polished. But I feel like the just sheer capital of hype and their experience producing, like with the best producers, it's almost over polished in the sense the song Fearless was. It was someone said it was just so perfected and polished that it had like no edge. Like it was just like a completely rounded product. But I loved Fearless. It was a bop.
This is really interesting to me because I was speaking to someone yesterday. Her name is Shihyun. She's probably the same age as you, Korean woman. And she was like, I don't get New Jeans. I think it's all fake. I don't think they're that popular. I think it's all produced and managed and things like this. So she was also very skeptical of this. And I'm hearing again from you that maybe there's some...
I somewhat agree, except for the they're not popular part. I do definitely see their popularity. I think I think they're popular because they project a fantasy, which I think a lot of people think K-pop groups present a fantasy. But in the past years, they've actually shifted to presenting more realness.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Their
yeah.
songs might seem sleek, but more reality shows, more TV appearances, more social media presence from them. They really want to show their human side, imperfect side, right? New Jeans, I think we're seeing that 신비주의, that mysteriousness strategy for the first time in a long time, which is, to some people, it looks like this perfect fantasy. They want to be like that, right? There's this word katseng recently,
Yeah.
like this perfect life. What would you call it? The Western like girl boss, like I don't know, clean girl. That
Yeah,
girl.
yeah. That girl.
Yeah.
That girl summer type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So I think people who wanted something like that love it. People who want more, I don't know, it's still very carefully managed, but something that's more raw, something that seems to be more raw, I think then they're a bit unsettled by New Jeans, like I am.
Yeah.
It's like too perfect.
Everyone's going to react different to them. One thing I like about them is their album cover.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just some cheap 8-bit like looking blue and white thing. It's amazing because like you have all this money and there's this focus on hyper real, polished, sexy, beautiful stuff, and that's your album cover. I'm like, that's pretty punk. I like that idea of because it looks so different from everything else, right? It's eye catching. I'm not sure what your take on this is, but I was always so cynical about, oh, this K-pop group is deep and they're referencing Carl Jung and it's psychology and it's philosophy. And I was like...
Who referenced Carl Jung?
I think it was half the time about BTS and things like this. But there was always this association that to be credible, they had to be deep and they had to have philosophical undertones. That was a lot of the narrative coming
Remember,
out.
like, the past 2 years, there was a phase when every K-pop group was singing about trauma.
Yeah.
And, like, can I cuss on this podcast?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, like these, okay, like for 2 years, every group has been coming up with like trauma, paranoia, and I was like, are these like groups like they seem fucked up? Like this group Epex was singing about lockdown, like their mental, basically like deteriorating mental condition in like COVID lockdown, basically. SF9 came out with Trauma. Kang Daniel's like trilogy about some sort of mental paranoia.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was like this phase about everyone wanting to seem very effed up.
It's commodifying mental health
Yeah,
problems.
and then New
It's-
Jeans just was like, yeah, let's roll with this. And I was like, we're going to dance in a psych ward. Yeah.
And if you throw shade, and wait, what did you say in your article? I think it was your one that I read, and it was like
it appropriates mental culture, and then in the end, it uses mental illness as an insult, which is like.
But it's saying the fans are mental. It was saying that the fans were mental, wasn't it?
No,
Wasn't that the
critics are mental.
The critics, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. The people throwing shade, the people online. It was insinuating that the craziness is it's you guys online that's doing it. I thought that was very interesting. There is a social trend, I think, that you can get cultural capital from expressing what kind of mental challenges you might have. I tried to express that to my Korean students when we're doing culture and media, that they might not see it here, but in other parts of the world, people are putting their, forgive me if I use the words wrong, but their mental conditions in their bios. They'll put like ADHD, bipolar and things like that, and it will give them some kind of credit or way of, navigating the world easier. And you tell that to Korean people and they're like, no. So there is a difference there. Coming back to that idea, what I like about it is that I'm not sure if this is if I'm seeing it correctly, but with people like New Jeans, we don't have to see them as deep. Like there was always this narrative with the boy groups, I thought, that they had to be kind of deep and understood, and there was this intellectual thing to them.
You have to study their worldview.
Right, exactly. But it's just pop music and there's people dancing, and that's what I kind of like about the New Jeans and that new stuff there, that it's just pretty girls dancing to music, and that's all it is. And that's not a bad thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, they're really coming back to what K-pop groups essentially were in the beginning. Just these heavenly, unrealistic, imperfect beings, like just symbols of beauty, no backstory, just like enjoy them, right?
Yeah.
TVXQ had no backstory. EXO had it, but like who else? Big Bang didn't have a worldview. Who else were just like perfect? Shiny didn't have a worldview, and I think until someone made up stuff for them for the Kwangya universe. It was just beautiful beings and like just enjoying them, praising them, right? I like literally true to the word idol.
Yeah, and I think there was pushback that they needed to be more than idols. They needed to be deep. They needed to have something. So they don't necessarily have to do that. They can just be the perfect beings dancing and doing that. Are we seeing, I mean, you mentioned some old groups now. Are we seeing the start of the girl groups coming and dominating now? Is that going to be, is that a correct assessment, Haley?
I think it is definitely. In terms of popularity, if you see the charts, basically it looks hopeless for boy bands.
Yeah.
NCT Dream was a surprise because they dropped something in December. I think peaked at second place or something.
Okay.
Which was like, it was the first time in a while that I've even seen any boy band in the top 50. And they made it on number 2. But
This on Melon, sorry.
On Melon, yeah. The thing is, though, I'm skeptical about how much of that was NCT Dream and how much of that was a remake of a 90s hit that people can listen to. Because 90s songs had melodies.
Yeah.
So people can actually like enjoy them and like listen to it. Their song released right before Candy.
Okay.
Their original songs didn't do that well among the public because it was less melody and more just performative yells, shouting, right? Which I enjoy,
No.
right? But apart from them, the charts is basically boy bands are basically missing.
Yeah.
I think the highest ranking song was like BTS's old song at like number 60,
Right.
like Dynamite. And even BTS's latest songs, they're not even like in the top 100 most of the times. So
that will amaze some people, I think. Though,
yeah,
that are not paying attention to the Korean domestic thing.
Yeah.
That they won't chart here or.
Yeah, they actually will barely chart here, right?
Yeah.
If you look at news about someone selling 1 or 2 million copies on Billboard, like the biggest K-pop acts on Billboard's articles or like talked abroad, they don't chart. Yeah, no one knows, like the Korean public, they don't know their names.
Yeah.
Or like even if they do know their names, they have no idea what their music is.
I really noticed that difference between international students coming in and just being like Stray Kids and this and this and all these members and wow, who Stray Kids? There's so much difference. I want to ask you about like the importance of Melon and whether it's how much of a role that plays with YouTube and everything these days. But what's that shift from the boy group to the girl group? Is that just a natural, we've done this, so now we're going to this? Is it planned? Or what do you make of that transition? How long is it going to last? Or does it reflect anything in society? Does it reflect this kind of rising up of female voices? Is it marketing to a vibe that's already in society and taking advantage of that? Or is it just a natural evolution of the industry and it goes through these cycles? Or
It does go in cycles. There's always like the dark ages of boy bands, dark ages of girl groups. Actually, so-called third generation, when like Monsta X, Icon, EXO came out. If you think about it, in the early 2010s, you can't really think of too many girl groups, can you? Just A-Pink, AOA. Apart from that, I can't really think of. And that era is actually called the dark ages of girl groups. And that was actually the second dark ages of girl groups. It comes in cycles. Yeah. Melon, I think, is always cited because it has the most users, right? I think YouTube music is really catching up, or it has caught up, basically, based on recent reports. But yeah, those two are the most cited, and I think it really does reflect what people around me are listening to the most, right? And they do really enjoy just listening to girl group songs, and the key is like enjoy. They don't know their worldview. Sometimes they don't even know the full member lineup, but they just think Love Dive is a bop. It's easy on the ears to listen to. A lot of people just know the song Hype Boy, even if they're not interested in K-pop. I think rather than a lot of the mainstream media is trying to make this about girl power. I think the public just got tired of studying these boy bands, right? In the beginning, when EXO came out with these superpowers, it could have been a novelty for fans to have something to study. And loyal fans still study worldviews by boy bands, but I think a lot of them just got too tired, right?
And so many members, and it's just a tired concept, I think, now, perhaps, And I don't know what you would take of this. You mentioned about what people around you are listening to. And this is just my own personal experience, but people will walk into a lecture hall and I'll say, Tia, what are you listening to? She'll say, music. I'm like, what music? She's like, pop music. I'm like, what pop music? And she's just like, music. But they're not like, oh, I'm listening to this third album, this underground track, this B-side. It's just people are walking around and just like, I'm just listening to the music that's on there. They're not always getting deep into these things.
That's still better than people who say, I don't really listen to music and don't own earbuds, which is because they're serial killers.
I've got earbuds, I've got pods, I've got all of these things.
Like, you don't have earbuds? Like, no, like, not Bluetooth ones, not those line ones. Like, they don't own anything. I was like, why? Because I don't listen to music. What do you do when you're walking or on the bus? I just sit there like a serial killer.
Thinking about serial killing. Yeah, maybe that's what they do. From serial killers to creativity. So this idea that they're perfect dancing idols, beings, and some people will be very cynical and go, oh, they're not writing their own music. They need to get a guitar and play a C major chord and something like that. Then it's genuine. But pop music doesn't have to be like that. It's just pop music. It's just about being a bop. Is there a growing sense of creative control coming into K-pop? So you've got Woozy from 17. You've seen like people trying to express, and they're writing their own songs. They're doing it. They're credible artists. We need to put them next to the Adeles of the world or the Silk Sonics or things like that. Or is a lot of this smoke and mirrors, do you think? What's going on with creativity in K-pop from the artists rather than the Kenzies or the Teddy Parks behind the scenes?
I think it's half and half. Half of them, I'm really impressed by their like willingness to really get their creative input into the work. They really want to do it. Sometimes agencies tell me that they kind of try to make the members write a lyric here and there, so that could be kind of like their copyright in the future. Yeah, I've actually been told like they kind of encourage them to have some sort of, I don't know, like income in the future.
That's where
potentially.
royalties come from.
Yeah,
That's where you get the money.
And I think that's better than nothing. But also a lot of the time, half of them it's the company just wants to say that they're self-producing because self-producing idols have become something cool. But honestly, most of the times I think it's a positive thing. A lot of the times I'm impressed by when I see, oh, the lyrics were written by this idol and it flows really well. Because I also notice a lot of people think participating in writing the lyrics is like easier than writing the song. So they kind of just want to take credit for self-producing. But writing the lyrics is like really hard, especially in K-pop songs. The beat's so just fragmented. Is always changing.
Right.
Yeah, like just try to like take any K-pop song and replace the lyrics with like your own. It sounds horrible. I've actually tried to do it because I was like, it kind of sounds easier than writing a song, but then it just sounds horrible.
We were talking before we started about the new, was it Taeyang and Jimin song, and Vibe, I think it's called, and I found the song boring AF, but the lyrics I thought were quite interesting. The way it's the old like, I'm the train, you're the conductor, I'm the pilot, you're the plane, that kind of thing. But it was all done through a modern lens. With I thought the lyrics were quite interesting to that. There's a lot of bands in the past that have not K-pop bands, but just general like music bands that break up because they get into arguments about who's going to play what songs, because they know that if you're the songwriter, you're getting all the money.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes. So that's quite interesting. I'd never considered that angle, that rather than giving them creative control, rather than trying to appeal to fans by saying you're getting the real message of these singers, but it might actually be a way of paying them money.
Yeah.
I never considered that. That's quite interesting to me.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time they do want to do that for creative desires, but a lot of the times they also want to kind of build a career for themselves. There's a lot of idol members who sell songs to newer acts, or like become a producer for newer groups. So I think that's a good side career.
This is a weird question, but if you get your average K-pop star, so we're not talking the Jennys or the Jimins or something, but your average K-pop star, how rich are they? Like, do they exist in a different stratosphere? Because if I'm thinking of sports players or something like that, even the average player in England, a football player, they might be earning £100,000 a week or something, and that's just ridiculous, right? And that's the average. An average K-pop star, are they living in a different stratosphere from us normal wage slaves, or?
The average? Okay, we're excluding the successful ones who are like young and rich, successful.
I just mean, if you take the very top, I think they're definitely super rich and they're existing there.
Yeah.
But if you're just getting your average, I don't want to call anyone average because that doesn't sound right. But you know what I mean? Just your normal, they're not like low, but
I'd say like average. So like, even in K-pop, I think we also have to consider like a median and an average, because there's like many more groups that don't get a cent from their activities because they didn't fail to generate any income to pay for their like investment and also get their personal share. I mean, Chu from Luna recently, like she's in a lawsuit because allegedly she didn't get paid anything at all, right?
That's why I'm asking you these questions. These stars come out and they're like,
she's definitely above the median of K-pop stars if we like put them all in a line. So if she's not getting paid anything because all these groups have to first pay off their investment, I really have honestly no idea. It also really depends on like what contract they signed, how much share they're getting from each company, stuff like that. But honestly, considering how many groups are out there and how little actually gets known by the general public, the average idol is probably financially struggling more than just normal young people, right? A lot of them say they take a lot of them come on reality shows and say, "Oh, I've been doing delivery, 배달이 민족," or like I've been working at a convenience store or like a cafe, for for their livelihood. So.
That's amazing, isn't it? That you can be so close to idleness, idoldom, whatever the word is, idle status, but then be so poor. Because, yeah, that's a sense I get from it, that these entertainment companies they're putting a lot of money in. And K-pop is not about like bedroom beats and one-shot videos or something. Do you know what I mean? You can be in other genres or things like that. You can make things pretty reasonably, or you can be a bedroom star.
Yeah.
K-pop's about the polishedness, isn't it? It's got to look good. It's got to sound good. It's got to be so... What's your take on the entertainment companies then? Because they control this. And if you were to ask someone who's the head of Universal Music, they would go, I don't know. Who's the head of Sony Music? I don't know. Who's the head of YG? Who's the head of SF? Who's the head of
YG had
Hybe?
his back recently.
Yeah, but you see what I mean by that.
Right.
We understand who the heads of these big companies are.
Yeah,
right?
big companies.
The big companies. Do you have any feeling about the entertainment companies themselves? Are they like just an extension of the chaebols, the conglomerates in Korea, or are they getting better? Are they modernizing? Would you work for one?
Based on what I'm hearing, I don't think they've spiritually or mentally caught up with how much they've improved economically or like globally. So it's like, honestly, it's kind of like a microcosm of Korean society. We've grown so much in terms of like economic power or like military power, these numbers. But I think a lot of the mental aspect, like the non-visible aspect, hasn't caught up yet. And by not caught up, I'm not saying everyone's horrible. I would say that there's such a large gap between people, right? This might be, but there's some people, like some people who've like been educated enough who are, let's say, they're like pure Korean, and they're not homophobic. They're supportive. But there's also Koreans who genuinely think like gay people just automatically get AIDS and give it to you by shaking your hand, right? This like crazy misinformation with like lack of education. I think they coexist in Korean society, and we also see that in K-pop. There's agencies that own this huge building, and it's like a giant machine. There's also agencies where this CEO like abuses their members for a year, like a whole year, and no one gets to know. The gap is so big.
Yeah.
Right. And even within the big companies, there are, disputes sometimes that kind of gives us a glimpse into, like they actually might be doing this, like they don't know what they're doing really.
There is an idea that Korean society is really kind of democratized. You can't, like, when that gapjeol became a phenomenon, it's like you can't hit people, you can't shout at people and spit at people in the street anymore. There was this kind of civilizing process that's taken place in the
theoretically.
I think it has. It's not perfect by any sense. I've had some people say to me that, David, it's bad, we're getting too much like the Japanese, we're becoming too polite, we're losing our Koreanness, right? But I think while that's happening in society, that's not necessarily happening places like the military or the K-pop industries, because there it is about control and hierarchical stature, and it's not necessarily a democracy, is it?
But the speed of changing is also really quick, I think.
Yeah.
Like these social movements that basically got introduced like 50 years later than the West, and it's actually become just as strong here. I think even well, I haven't been there, so I can't say, but I think even the military, just by what we hear on the news, I think it's become better than the past. Might not mean much, but it was just so horrible like a decade ago. And now, I'm not sure, but we're not seeing as many people like reported in the news like got beat up to death by their senior officers.
That's smartphones and that's things like that. And the military also knowing that it has to modernize, right?
The smartphones always existed, but it was some political entity stepping in to allow them in the military to let them like collect evidence, stuff like that, right?
Yeah. But it's definitely changed. My brother-in-law's a lieutenant colonel, and he'll tell me that it's really, it's becoming closer to what it's like in society, because otherwise people are not going to come, or there's going to be unrest, So.
Is he saying that with kind of like a disdain? Because my aunt works for the military, and she's not saying this with like disdain, but she's like, oh, it's changed so much. It's like basically civilian. They get to do a lot of what they want to do.
Yeah, no, I think the change is necessary, and I think he realizes that. And I spoke to General Chun In-bum, who was really high, and he said the same thing. It's like we do need to change, and we need to encourage good behavior through it. So that is changing that way. Yeah, but that's the military. That's not K-pop, is it? You were mentioning about this thing, like we'll come to this, but the cultural issues. I will sit in a Korean lecture hall and young adults, reasonably intelligent and things like that, they'll just be like, I'm absolutely opposed to LGBT and things like that. You know, we get this idea, I think, through K-pop and through Hallyu dramas with representation in things like Mine or Itaewon Class or Seulgi and Irene and all this thing, that Korea must be a pretty progressive place and it's supportive of these. But
maybe not in terms of LGBT. K-pop's still very heteronormative, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but society is as well, I think, you know. It's I don't think if there was a referendum on gay marriage that it would pass tomorrow at all. And just some young people would just be like, no, I'm opposed to that. And you'd be like, why? And they're just like, because I am.
Yeah, and they're proud of it.
Yeah, some are proud. Some have no idea what's going on. They're like, why are you asking me this? But that's cultural issues. Are there any? This was one I wanted to ask you about. I saw Tama Herman did this best albums of 2022, and it was a 22-minute read it advertised on LinkedIn. It's just like every possible album linked there, and it's like, if you're going to put everything, that doesn't really count. You've got to put something like that. Are there any things that we're sleeping on? Are there any groups? Because it's very easy to talk about the New Jeans, the Le Seraphims, the NCTs, or something like that. Is there anything that we're sleeping on, Haley?
2 days ago, I interviewed this group called Only One Of.
Only One Of?
Only One Of, yeah.
Okay.
And I really think they're just painfully underrated. Their company doesn't want to come completely honest about it, but a lot of their videos and songs, even like the descriptions of the songs, they contain a lot of LGBT references. They don't want to say they're directly referencing to it, but it's kind of obvious. And their music's also very well written. It's not. It doesn't sound like a lot that I would listen to. They recently finished a project where all the members released a single, but like the one song that actually registered them to me 2 years ago is a song called Libido. Yeah, a K-pop idol. Yeah, so I was like, okay, this is not going to be an ordinary K-pop group, but the song was actually very, I don't know what to say, body positive. Right. It's just very it was just praise of everything aesthetic. I thought it was a very fascinating topic to sing about. Also, the song wasn't just like lazy shouting. It was very good production and singing, right?
Yeah.
I just mentally check out when someone just starts randomly shouting. If done well, it's a good song, but so many K-pop, especially male idol songs, they're like, oh, what do we do here? Let's just shout.
Let's shout something. Yeah. Lazy shouting? Lazy
shouting.
I
only wrote melody for this first verse.
Yeah.
Shouting it is.
Yeah. Let's shout together.
Yeah.
Yes. Only One Of. Okay. This is, I mean, one of the things that I see about what you do, Haley, is that you actually spend time with these groups. They might be up and coming groups, or you'll correct me on this, but when I check your Insta stories, you're accessing K-pop through, tell me what they're called, like live performances and interviews and like debut stages and things like this with the group. So you get to see them up close. You get to see them walk into rooms and sit down and do interviews. I noticed that they all have name tags on, which I find a little bit...
We prepared them.
You prepare
Yeah,
them?
we prepare them. Sometimes they do bring it, but actually we've prepared most of them. And I must admit it helps us.
Yeah, because it'd be really embarrassing, I get, to get
Exactly.
someone's name wrong. But yes, so you prepare them.
Our team does.
Your team does, yeah, okay. But let's talk about that, because that's something that I don't really think you've written about, and that's something in K-pop that I only see through your Insta stories, nowhere else.
Companies, that's the thing. We're like, it seems like, I feel like too, that we're at the very front line. It's just that even in those moments, they're so carefully managed.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you mean carefully managed? In what way?
Like anytime some makeup gets smudged, the staff will run to them to fix it, right? Just moving in between, the company's also giving them like kind of guidelines. yeah, and also these background stories, they don't want them to get outside. So after an interview, they would come to us and say, oh, can you please take out this quote? It could be offensive to fans. That was kind of, yeah. One group actually started talking about farting during the interview, but in a funny way, a potty joke.
Yeah.
And this company was so serious about taking that out. And I was like, it's more immature that you want to censor that because these are grown people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, farts and poo, that's part of Korean folklore and culture.
Yeah. there was this whole
stories here.
book dedicated about just folklore about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me that it's like micromanaged. Is there people kind of rushing about them? It's like when you go to a Korean wedding or something.
Yeah,
There's always somebody like checking the bride, and they'll even be running up the aisle with them holding stuff. Is that the sense you get from it?
In the sense that I look at them and I think I never want to do that.
No.
It's kind of the same thing. Yeah, actually, I never thought about it that way, but it's very similar to Korean weddings.
Be like your wedding every day or something.
Yeah.
That was a suck, man.
Yeah.
That would be too
my
hard.
cousin's getting married next month. The only thing I'm hyped about is what foods they're gonna give us.
You're a proper Korean now.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah. The
Koreans
ceremony
like.
is gonna be the same. The dress is gonna be the same. The makeup is gonna be the same.
Yeah. Stop throwing shade on your cousin's wedding. Like, it's their special
It's
day.
your fault for planning such a boring wedding.
How hot are these people in real life, or what do you get when you're in their presence? Like,
Oh no, I'm
not
gonna
sure
get
if you'll
fired.
if you need to be careful of this, just we'll move on from it. But like I say, it's something I don't see elsewhere. That's why I want to talk about it. But you're that close to them. I can take selfies, and I'll take 20. And one will look good, and that's the one I'll post on my Insta story. Do you know what I mean? Like,
And these people are just like,
yeah, I know it's a lot of work to make me look respectable with this face. But my question is, when you're this close to these people, like, what do you get in terms of the aesthetic, in terms of the beauty? Because that's important in K-pop.
I have developed intense body dysmorphia. Yeah, seriously.
Explain
Now
it.
I actually this is like a personal thing I need to work on, but like my relationship with food was never anything but my body needs it, nourishes me. It was never more than that. But honestly, I think the point that I started having this weird relationship with food, feeling guilty every time I eat something or snack, I think it's the time that I started covering K-pop. Yeah. You look at them.
Yeah.
Obviously not everyone's gonna look perfect, right? But
Right, sure.
they still are much more polished and perfected than the ordinary individual, which makes sense. They have all day and resources to do that, right?
Yeah.
None of us get paid to look good, right? Unlike them. So why should we try that hard?
Yeah.
But just looking at them, it's a very surreal experience. And honestly, when I was a teen, I never actually thought about what influence they had. Now that I kind of see them as an adult, I can't even fathom like what influence they have on teens looking at them.
That's
Yeah.
kind of scary. I've been with you in a coffee shop and you ate cake with me, so I'm happy that you're able to
Yeah.
do that. And for those that might just be listening to this, Haley, now I'm going to get in trouble for this, but like you look good.
Thank you. My body dysmorphia says otherwise.
If I go to I was back in the UK a couple of months ago. In the UK, I feel thin. I feel good. In Korea, I feel fat all the time. I mean, I get it.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, in the US, I was tiny.
Yeah.
Right? And here, I don't think I'm on the tiny side. I'm just like average or a bit bigger, built. Well, yes. And these K-pop idols, it's even more surreal because they could be the same height as you, right? Usually in real life, if you're a bit taller, you're like you're supposed to have a bit more like mass, I would say.
Yeah.
These people like have no extra fat hanging around.
No mass.
Yeah, no mass. No mass. Just barely enough to cover your bone structure.
Bad Catholics.
And they tell me they're hungry. Some of them told me they're hungry. Yeah.
They must, and that's probably micromanaged by the entertainment
Yeah.
companies as well. I guess there's probably restrictions. I remember speaking to Daisy from Momoland. She was all about that. She was like, I have to get weighed all the time, and they're saying I've got to lose this much weight. So you're getting the struggles just looking at them.
Yeah.
They must be living it.
But it's sometimes they tell us they're living it, and it's kind of interesting to hear. One member was not Korean and said anytime like the 사장님, the agency, had nagged her for something, she pretends not to understand Korean. But she's so annoyed because diet is a word that's in English, so she can't pretend not to understand. And she was pretty open about on camera. She was pretty open about the fact that the agency's always talking about dieting. Yeah,
yeah. It's a big thing. Like you don't get. I might get in trouble here. You don't get an Adele or something like that in K-pop, do you? Although Adele got really thin.
I know. And
she?
So there was like this reel of plus size K-pop idols.
Okay.
It was basically just 3 people who weren't bone.
Right.
Yeah, just
people
that's
used to
not
say that about
plus size.
Hwasa or something like that. They would say like Hwasa is like breaking beauty norms. I'm like, Hwasa.
She is not. She is beauty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one thing, this big thing.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 or 10 years ago, there was this concept called activity period and like rest, basically break period, when like these groups release an album, they're active for 1 or 2 months, and in between they're not seen as much by the public. So that was kind of like the given. It was a given that they would get a bit fatter during that period, and when they had to get ready for a comeback, they would start losing weight. So that was kind of like the known cycle even among the public. Now there's no break because they're always during at fan signs, they're always doing Instagram live. So they always have to look good. So they don't have a period where they can catch a break and eat the cake that they couldn't. Wow. So now the diet just goes on. And if they just had to be on a diet for like 3-4 months a year, like once or twice, I might say, well, that's their job. If it's the whole year round, I don't think that's just human.
No. I mean, but they might do it. They might like it. But I guess when it's out of your control, when it's you're losing your own agency to do things. I mean, we can decide, you and I can decide to gatseng or diet, or we can decide to eat cake and chicken. It's up to us. But for those people, I guess it's a little bit different. It's really funny seeing some, sorry to go on this tangent, but some football players, when after they retire, they just balloon and get really fat. They're like, yeah, I'm enjoying myself now. I had to stay in shape for all that time. What's the beauty aesthetic like in K-pop? Because earlier you were talking about shiny and dong. If you go through time, you don't, you not only see like girl group dark ages and things, but you'll also see the beauty concepts change.
Yeah.
And, it's been dark skin, and it's been like 상남자, like tough guy looks, and it's been, the one I couldn't get was like wet face. There was this period about like 2 years ago where just even on television, like news anchors, K-pop idols,
everyone was covered in a thin layer of Vaseline on their face.
Get a towel, goddammit. It just looked really uncomfortable to me, but it was a trend, right? And now the trend seems to be just pale. You've got to look dead white. That seems to be what I've seen.
Believe it or not, Korean girl groups used to tan once in the early 2000s.
Yeah, like Taehyori and things like that. And that was the look, right? Even, I guess, Girls' Generation, Wonder Girls, they had that. What's the beauty thing like when you see it up close? Because that's a sticky point, I think, for some, because there's this kind of androgyny, there's this flower boy concept, and a lot of people might misperceive it as being gay or something like that. That's a stereotype that comes out. You've also got this angle that, international students will come to Korea expecting everyone to look like oppa.
Yeah.
They look at the Pyeongjam
the Korean JoongAng Daily wrote an article about it. Foreign women shocked when Hyunbin isn't on street. I was like, okay. But I see a lot of cases like that more than I'd like to admit.
Sure.
Right? A lot of people kind of complain that K-pop idols only care about looking good. They can't sing live or like whatever. But I think like all of us, y'all are responsible for that, because no matter what other talent they have, it's only seen as long as they pass in terms of looks, right? I was actually planning if I should write something about, is it a K-pop idol's responsibility to stay thin, right? Because some of them just have some layer of excess fat, right? And they're just bashed for it. Not just getting mocked for like body shame, but saying that they're not professional enough. They've let go of themselves when if they're professional, they should know that they should stay thin, right? But how many people have that discipline and can also sing, dance, right? We expect so much from them. And I remember like about, I don't know, 8 years ago when Taylor Swift came out with her like her new image, like Shake It Off, stuff like that. I think I read an opinion about in the days of ABBA. Those ladies looked good,
Yeah.
but they were nowhere near this like pinpoint perfect beauty that Taylor Swift has in her like blank space music video, right? And even if you compare it to like press photos for Wonder Girls or Girls' Generation in the early ages, they have real skin color. Do you see that? And
Yeah,
like photos from the 2000s, they have normal skin colors. They also have, I feel like they have normal eye sizes. Sometimes, like especially for Asian face features, depending on the lighting, your eyes can look small. Like they can't look gigantic in every lighting. But nowadays, every photo you see, they're pale. And they have gigantic eyes that are round. They're so round at every angle.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you see them in real life, it's not like that. But nonetheless, they want to present that image. I don't know how things got so unrealistic slowly.
Is this K-pop or is it just Korean society, I think? But I'm asking you this question because in Korea, you go up to someone if they get fat, you're like Tizzard. It's common. I don't do that, but it's part of Korean
But
society.
I think
that
we've
there's...
improved a lot, though,
Yeah,
very
okay.
rapidly, right? I think women actually in real life they face less pressure to be pale now.
That's good.
Yeah. Clothing also feels less pressuring to look really thin. Like if you look at fashion from the 2000s, they were all very tight fitting, and now I think more loose clothes are popular among the general public.
Skinny jeans are out at the moment.
Skinny jeans
is
are
no
out.
way. No.
Also, some people kind of look at you funny if you're like always too dolled up for like every gig.
Yeah. No.
But I think K-pop, it was already kind of strict for K-pop idols, but it got even harsher when it got a bit easier for the general public, at least in my circle.
Is there a lot of plastic surgery going on? Do you think? I mean, the reason I want to ask you this, Haley, is that I can't necessarily tell. If
Sometimes
someone's
you
had-
can. But...
Oh, yeah, sometimes you can. It's normally the nose. The nose sometimes looks too lifted for me, right? And it looks a bit piggy, like the snout, the nostrils come up. But I can't immediately tell if someone has had plastic surgery or not. I don't have an eye for it, I don't think. But is there a lot going on? Do you get a sense of that? Is it an impolite question? And it's because in South Korea, I think plastic surgery is seen as a sign of strength or spec up or improvement. Hey, it's a semester break time. What are you doing? I'm going to get some plastic surgery and go back next semester and crush it. That's what people do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like considered a form of adding a line in your resume,
Yeah.
like upping your competitive edge.
Yeah.
Apparently, Koreans can't always tell if the other person had surgery either. Sometimes I see a really good-looking K-pop idol.
Yeah.
I want to find out more about them,
Yeah.
and then you inevitably... Is there something? Oh.
Keep going. I've got some emergency message.
A lot of snow tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. So I'm looking up these K-pop idols, and I inevitably stumble across their old photos, and sometimes they look different. Sometimes it's noticeable. Sometimes it looks like, oh, did they just lose weight or grow out of it, or like did they have some kind of work done? Honestly, I don't think there's a country where the entertainers don't get plastic surgery. Like they say, no one in Hollywood has the nose they're born with, right? Taylor Swift looks different. A lot of people are getting buccal fat removal recently.
What fat?
Buccal fat.
Buccal?
Yeah, there was like a CNN article about it. Everyone's getting their like chin fat sucked out.
Cheek mass.
Yeah, and cheek mass is out, and they all look like Skeletor's cousin now.
Skeletor has good memes.
Yeah, Skeletor has a very nice jawline. So
Yeah.
but I don't think Koreans want the pronounced cheekbone. But some idols keep it, and I think it looks good on them. But apart from that, at the end of the day, you see a lot of members starting to look very similar to each other.
That's why you put the name tags on them, I guess.
Because honestly, if you want to reach perfection, usually there's one idea of perfection in a society. The closer you get to it, the more similar you will look.
I think in multicultural societies, there's various different beauty standards, I think, that come from the different ethnicities, races, cultures, and things like that. And you do get a lot more variation in what is considered beautiful, because beauty is, in part at least, socially constructed, because what is beautiful changes over time. But in Korea, it does seem in the K-pop industry that there's a standard of beauty, right? And that's what it means to be beautiful.
Right. But it's also changed a lot.
It does change over time,
Right.
but there's not always a great variety at one time. So it changes over time, but at one period of time, you won't see a great variety in that period, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true. Even in 2015, thin lips were in vogue, right?
Okay.
There were lip reduction surgeries. And now there's lip filler, so I'm just like, I'm going to kill you all because what is this? Like, this is just like basically what are the people who people who got that surgery are likely to be sensitive of what's trending at the time. So what are these people are gonna do? They increase their reduced lips.
Yeah,
right?
Put their cheek mask in there that they
put that back in.
Put that back
right?
in. And how you might say this is a very rude question, and you might not like it. Have you considered getting some plastic surgery? Like, as a young woman in Korea, you perhaps feel more pressures than I do. You're around these beautiful people. Have you sat there and thought, maybe I should get it?
I think,
Is it a
you know
real
what
thing?
stops me is that I'm going to be broke because there are going to be so many parts of me to fix, right? Because if you're going to fix one part, why not fix the other? And honestly, if you want to really reach perfection by going under the knife, there's more than a couple places to work on. So honestly, I was thinking, I would either die because of just entire body surgery, or I would survive it and like pay that off for the rest of my life, right? Because what I noticed is there's no end, right?
It's why I haven't got any tattoos yet.
There's
Because
no
it's
end.
just like I just want to keep going, or I have a very addictive personality, and just with age, it's easier to love your flaws, I think.
What, like, if you decide to change your features, what's stopping you from shaving your jaw?
Yeah.
And if you're shaving your jaw, what's stopping you from getting a butt lift? There's no end, right?
Yeah, I'm sure many people would look better with a shaved jaw and a butt lift, but
Yeah, but then I know people get their ears changed, right? There's ear plastic surgery. Like, there's plastic surgery for ears.
What do you
Some
do?
people have big ears and they want to reduce it.
I know some
push
people
it.
like to keep their ears. My ears stick out a bit, but some people want them stuck.
Just live with your ears. Like,
Well, the best thing about it is you don't have to look at your own face too much, as long as other people have to look at it. So it's
like
hard on
people
them.
who
but-
monitor their faces if they do it for a living, right?
Yeah. I guess.
Honestly, I was thinking, like, if I had to monitor an hour of footage of me in a reality show, I would like just go crazy.
Yeah. A lot of the television and stuff like that I've not watched. Because as soon as I
I'm
as soon
like
as I see
done.
myself, I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I can't do that. I
That's
can't do that."
between the camera and God. I don't look at it again.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult. With this, shall we talk about a little bit about your work? Because we've spoken about this personally off camera, and how you've gone like from lengthy, in-depth columns, and you can look at serious issues like beauty standards and like, I don't know, queer baiting and cultural appropriation. Perhaps we'll touch on some of them in a minute as well. But with this increased focus on K-pop, like K-pop now is on the front of Rolling Stone and Time and at the UN and Coachella and all these things. There's this increased focus on K-pop. How is that affecting reporting on the K-pop industry? One of the big things that bugs me is I'll be scrolling through the internet and there'll be a newspaper headline that says Blackpink's do passes 1.2 billion views. And I'm like, that's not news.
That's what I think too.
It's just like, that's, and you'll open up and I'm a terrible person for clicking on the link because that's what they want me to do. But it's not actual news, and it's just people will support it because it says Blackpink or NCT or Stray Kids in there, and they'll support that. But is the increased popularity of K-pop having a negative effect on reporting, or do you just have to dig deeper to find it? Is it getting better over time, or?
I think it's getting more and more confusing. That's definitely a fact. One thing that bugs me is you don't have to be Korean or like know well about all Korean issues to report that. But I would see a lot of the reporters have no idea about what's happening. Someone told me about these two white podcasters who have basically no ties to the country Korea or the language, but their whole podcast is about K-pop analyses.
Okay.
Right? Which I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
But one thing for sure is that I think that all adds to like the volume and increased confusion about the dialogue surrounding K-pop, right? And yeah, it's just everyone wants to kind of ride that hype, that clout.
Yeah.
So with more voices added, there's bound to be more chaos. Yeah.
That's why I previously liked your work, because I know where to find that good stuff. I listened, and I'm not sure if we're talking about the same podcast, but I was linked to two girls do a podcast on K-pop, and they saw one of my articles on it, and they just spent an hour tearing me apart.
Oh,
like
I think it was
this guy doesn't even know who's shiny. He wouldn't even know that. And I was just sitting there going like, oh, come on. Like, it's not. But in the end, I just sent them a message like, good luck with your podcast. And I just tried to show them some love in return.
OG in their view is shiny, not some 90s star that they probably don't know about.
Everyone's got their own take on it, I think. But it is becoming more international. I think there's some ownership over it, like with Koreanness, and there's that idea of whether, how close can you get? Do you have to speak Korean to really get what's going on in K-pop? Or that's the difficult thing about K-pop, because, for example, Haley, if you and I went into a music studio, we could make a rock album, we could make a jazz album, we could make a lazy shout album. It would be difficult to do a K-pop album just because of my identity. You'd be able to get away with it. But there's
Too old.
Yeah, too old. You need a butt lift first.
Yeah.
Or
Paid, and that counts as investment, so I have to pay that off with my album.
I'm putting my butt on direct debit or something, planned payments. But there is an identity thing behind K-pop, isn't there? There is this kind of ownership, and there was this band that came. There was a group that came out of the UK called Catchy. Did you see them? It's like a UK K-pop group.
This is not EXP edition?
No,
Okay.
This is a UK K-pop group, and had one member with Korean ethnicity, I believe, but like I showed it to some of my students and I was like, is this K-pop? Because they're doing all the stuff, but they're just like English white people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this K-pop? And one of my students said this amazing thing. She said, it doesn't matter about their ethnicity or whether they're Korean or not. It's just they're terrible. They need to train more. They need to train more. They need to dance more. They need to get their choreography better. Like, that's what makes something K-pop.
Yeah. I always like to compare K-pop to vaudeville.
Okay.
Like 1920s, early 1900s vaudeville. Because like Judy Garland. Like, there's no point in saying if she's a dancer, if she's a singer. Like, all of those combined was the art form, vaudeville, right?
Yeah.
And also a big part of that genre was, stars would go on dates with each other to create press buzz. Like, that was already existing in the 30s, like 50s. And that's completely outside of their art, right? But that was also, like, the publicity was also a crucial part. Like, kissing GIs was also a big part of, like, what they did. And I think it's kind of meaningless to say, oh, can Jang Won-young sing? Is all she knows, like, just, like, is all that she does just looking pretty? She doesn't even sing. Or, like, is she a really pro dancer? There's, like, no point in arguing about that if you just think of K-pop as an art form, right? There's all of these combined with this formula, grammar, and these set activities you follow. Then it's K-pop, I think.
They don't date, though.
I would replace that with creating this para-romantic relationship with fans.
Yeah, it's parasocial, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're all about it. That always, like, you can go online and you can see memes about Leonardo DiCaprio's conquests. I know he's not a singer, but or Miley Cyrus's or Justin Bieber's. That's what you expect of these people, because they're young, they're ridiculously good looking, to use a Zoolander quote. They're in the prime of their sexual life. They're
Yeah.
but there's no dating. That's
And
why I've always liked that. Like everyone's beautiful, but no one's horny.
Yeah, exactly. I told that quote to my mom, and she just lost it. She loved it. And honestly, sometimes I look at them in real life and I'm like, does anyone seriously believe they're celibate?
Yeah, but that's what we're meant to believe, isn't it? They keep.
Do any of you believe that? Get help.
Do they keep it well under wraps? I don't spend a lot of time on K-pop like gossip pages or things like that. I've heard rumors about. I think it was Jenny and G-Dragon or something, but that's about as far as I go. I think G-Dragon's with everybody. Now a Chaebol daughter, I think.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. But is it like one of those, the world's worst kept secret? There is this whole conversation going on about it, or that's just nobody really knows?
I think it's some of them are well kept secrets. Some of them they just don't get caught. Mm-hmm. Like there's rumors about agencies like trying their best to hide it. Mm-hmm. I can't confirm that because they would never say that to the public. Honestly, based on what fans kind of like gossip online, I think a lot of them are just open secrets. Like Chen got married only a few,
shit.
but Chen was I mean like middle school me knew that he was dating that specific lady. So
No.
Why are you surprised after someone dates someone for 10 years and you're shocked that they're getting married?
No,
It just
no.
yeah, sounds right to me.
It's just that it makes it so different from every other aspect of society, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It's like you're not meant to date, or you can't express these things. You can't have sexual agency. You can't be in charge. You have to tell people to love yourself and be in charge and girl boss and yassification, all this. But like, it is kind of an image sometimes, or a projection. I'm not sure whether it's just to keep them pure, to keep them away from scandals, because Korea is quite conservative, or whether it is because just of that parasocial relationship that they create with the fans. I'm not sure. It's probably all of them, but it's unique to K-pop, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like that in R&B or jazz or anything else.
Not at
There's
all.
that. And it does make me wonder what effect that has, if any, on society. Like, because in Korea, K-pop is a teenage thing.
Right.
Right. It's middle school, high school, and then you kind of move on, what I've noticed from some people. But then does that have any effect? Does it give people this image of not dating, being pure and...
I think it's more the cause because teens in Korea are separated still by gender.
Yeah.
I've only been to co-ed schools in Korea because I went to high school in the U.S. And luckily my middle school, I don't know if I would say luckily, but I don't think I would have like socialized properly if I was in a school for 3 years with only female classmates. Just like in terms of just getting ready for like what real society is going to be like.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say that the rising conservativeness of young men in Korea, a lot of them have to do with all male high schools, right? And teens are already so used to being separated. I think they also expect it from singers. I think that's how it works, rather than them looking at idols and thinking we should be separated because the government separated them in the first place.
Yeah.
And the reason that they're separated is because Koreans think of pre-college dating as like some taboo that will, in a way, will ruin your life if you don't get into a Sky University. Your high school life and before that should be completely dedicated to getting into the best college possible. Yeah, so that was weird. I still know some friends who are my age, 25 and international age, and their parents are so interested in their dating lives and sometimes really disturbingly their sexual lives. And I'm like, I don't want to talk shit about your parents, but are they okay? Like, this sounds like some stuff from Misery. Yeah, like, why would any sane, healthy, now I'm just insulting their parents, but like, why would anyone not sick care about their children in their 20s to 30s personal lives like that?
Yeah, there's extended kind of childhood here, isn't there, I think? That's financial reasons, cultural reasons. There's lots of girls' high schools as well. I mean, I teach at a women's university. I've spent more than a decade, nearly 2 decades there, and that certainly has its own vibe.
Yeah, my sister went to an all-women's university, and her college life sounds like was a completely different vibe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky that I'll go to Seoul Women's University and then Hanyang University, so I get perspective from both of how they're playing out. And I don't know if I'm going too TMI on this, but sometimes there's this thing in Seoul Women's University that if a young woman might start dressing up too much or wearing too much makeup, it's like, no, you're not meant to do that.
Yeah,
like,
that
you're betraying
was
the
also,
sisterhood or something.
Yeah.
In Hanyang,
I
there's a
heard
lot
that
more
too.
variety.
Which I don't know if I'm gonna get hate for this or support for this, because like I think you can't win in this movement, right? In these different movements, I've got judged by some people for being too feminist.
Okay.
I've also got cut off by people for being too adjusting to the patriarchy. So I don't know what I really am.
What are you doing right now? I'm adjusting to the patriarchy.
I'm like selling my soul to the patriarchy.
I'm slowly adjusting to the patriarchy. That's an interesting thing to consider, how one would do that.
Yeah.
When we talk about relationships and how people do that, and we've talked about fans, do you have any takes on shipping?
Shipping.
Like BL?
Oh, I've seen more gay shipping, yeah.
Yeah, because there's this whole kind of thing going on. It's not just in K-pop.
Now it's mainstream pop culture.
Yeah, it's One Direction and Sherlock and all that. There are different parts of it, but I was kind of surprised how deep this kind of stuff goes.
Considering how homophobic Korean society is.
Yeah,
right?
And it's weird, but just creating these, for those people not quite aware perhaps, I guess, but you might describe it better than me, but it's creating fantasy erotic homosexual relationships.
Think of Harry Potter gay fan fictions.
Oh,
yeah.
I just thought about it and it's
not
nice.
There were so many. That was like I did not enjoy them, but they were part of my childhood. Like,
They were part of your childhood.
Does anyone remember this Harry Potter fan fiction that starts with "It was raining and snowing at the same time"?
I've not seen the Harry Potter movies or read the books. I'm well behind.
Like, how is it raining and snowing at the same time?
Is that the fanfic version or the real version?
It was the fanfic.
The fanfic version. And what happened in that? Did like Harry and Ron get it on?
There was a lot about Snape and Dumbledore. I hate to put this imagery in your heads.
Yeah.
Worse things can happen, so deal with it. But yeah, basically, honestly, it's not that new of a concept if you just think about those. I didn't get into Twilight that much, but I bet there was gay Twilight fan fictions, right?
I can believe that as well. And it comes from straight women predominantly, doesn't it?
Right.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. Is that how it plays out?
And I have a theory on that because actually straight women and straight men in Korea, even the young people, they're equally homophobic. I would say men are more homophobic in Korean society, but women aren't that pro-LGBT either in Korea.
Right.
Even young women, surprisingly. The reason I think BL is still really popular is it's one of the very few areas in society that doesn't objectify women. Mm-hmm. Women are not the subject of sexualization. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're not threatened by anything because in those novels there's romance that young women crave. They want to read about, but there's no women to be objectified because it's all men's love stories, right?
And they become sort of the puppet master. They get to control the men. I think it's empowering, I guess.
Yeah.
To
Shipping is Shipping kind of makes some people feel like they are having creative control, I guess. Because, if you watch, it's getting better, but if you watch K-dramas or like, especially Korean literature, women are basically just plot devices, objectified, no empowering element whatsoever in a lot of these romantic dynamics. It's usually just this hero figure coming and sweeping and helping this helpless woman, right?
Bechdel tests failing all over the place,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
I think that's changing in K-dramas. I think there's a lot of strong female characters in K-dramas, but certainly those soppy love romantic ones.
Right.
Do you watch K-dramas? I have to start most K-dramas for my Hallyu courses, and I have to at least watch an episode or get the idea. I finish very, very few of them.
I actually cannot really sit through.
Has there been any that you've liked?
I don't really watch shows in general. I don't really think Western shows are that much better. It's just a lot of cliches, a lot of unnecessary romances. In the West, it's not unnecessary romance is just unnecessary scenes that I can't watch with my mom. Yeah, just
here's
out of
dragons and
nowhere.
sex and tits.
Out of nowhere, yeah.
I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once the other day. Have you seen that?
I have not.
It's amazing.
I'm
You have to
just
watch
realizing I only listen to music.
No, I listen to music as well. Like that's basically all I do. I listen to music while I work. Like while I'm writing and working and things like that. Not while I'm in the lecture hall, but while I'm writing or while I'm working, I've always got music on. And I know Korean people don't like that, but I've always got it on. Watch that movie, by the way.
Okay.
Don't Google it. Right?
I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, but it blew me away. It was fantastic, man. Really good, really good. Social media and K-pop, like what I mean about this, what I want to talk about, Haley, is that you write a lot in the press. I write a lot in the press. I write a column, and I might write about social issues, political issues, things like that. But if I'm writing about K-pop, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to get touchy here. More so than the politics, more so than the gender, more so than North Korea. Like I work for NK News as well. But it's writing about K-pop seems more dangerous than any of the other stuff. And it blows my mind that it's like that. I understand that online communities can be a safe space. They can be a place of love. They can make people feel welcome and sanctuary. And they do that. And that's actually a good thing. A lot of people do find hope and solace. But at the same time, it can be one of the most toxic corners of the internet.
Yeah.
What's your take on the online communities surrounding K-pop? Just going on Twitter, how do you perceive that?
I think even the online community, we have to see Korean fandoms.
Okay.
And foreign fandoms separately.
Okay.
I think they can equally be toxic in different ways. They can equally be wholesome in different ways. Korean fandoms obviously lose their crap over minor dating scandals, which I think is just nonsensical, right? Foreign fandoms will defend murder, like just. I'm like, how are you doing this mental gymnastics? Like this is an outstanding move. Yeah. So, I think Korean fandoms will call out too much. I think foreign fandoms defend too much. Could be a healthy balance.
So they could learn from each other, I guess.
Yeah. The one thing I notice is a lot of the foreign fans don't speak Korean.
Right.
So a lot of them, I think they feel better when they just add in some misinformation to make the star look better and believe it, because they don't ever have to compare it with the original language, right?
Sure. Do you spend much time? I mean, do you check reactions to your work? Do you see what people are saying about it? Because you write about this stuff and then it gets spread and disseminated. I guess you predominantly, do you only write in English? Have you done work in Korean? I've written some in Korean just for like a task force. Okay. Yeah. Is that like some military thing? No, it was like just this team called K-Enter Task Force that I was drafted to, basically. That sounds very military. What was the language you were using? Like, Tung. Okay. KTF. Yeah. What happens when you look online and things like that? Is there an element of trepidation, or your work survives? You haven't been. I think I check Twitter or my just work mail. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I get encouraging compliments or questions. Right? That's great. And I think that's kind of what makes it worthwhile, right? Or even sometimes people find my article from 2 years ago and say they stumbled across this during my PhD and like, I want to ask this, or like they thought it was helpful. But then again, someone calls me a stupid bitch for saying that EXO's debut was unsuccessful, which I know it was because I bought all copies of the debut album. I'm not a fake fan, and it was unsuccessful. And they're calling me ARMY, and honestly, I was equally childish 2 years ago, so I sent them a photo of my EXO album collection saying, I can be a fan, but I can also say this was not their most well-received work. Yeah. So you have to defend, you push back on it a little bit. Yeah. The internet is forever, isn't it? That's nice that you get, because I get it. This week I've had 2 emails about one column that I wrote like 2 years ago. People writing about the same thing, but it's it's so nice that people would take a moment out of their day to email you, to ask a question or to send a compliment or things like that. And it makes me realize, Haley, when you get those emails, people are complimenting you, not calling you the stupid bitch, but they're saying this was good or asking you a question. It makes you feel good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that is, what I've asked myself is, when I receive these emails, makes me feel good. How many times have I done that to someone else?
Yeah.
Rather than just receiving all these
Yeah.
emails and feeling good and waiting for the next one, it's like, I should pass this on to someone. I should not pass the email on, but I should pass this feeling on to someone. I should make someone else feel like
Or
that.
tell them I'm waiting for your next piece of content, right?
Yeah. Basically, the idea of just being spread the love.
Yeah.
Because I know it sounds cliche, but it genuinely makes me feel good. I'm sure it makes you feel good. It's one way of doing it.
I think it's also what motivates me to recommend some bands to other people, right? Because I genuinely enjoyed their work. Kind of makes my life richer with their art. So I want to tell other people about it, even if they're not the most hyped up group.
No.
Or like some people don't really think they're that good. But I just like to promote them based on my free will.
Yeah. Do you like Lee Chan-hyuk? Do you like Akmu? Do you like Lee Soo-hyun?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why not?
I think they're so talented. Obviously, like in terms of singing, like there's pretty much no K-pop idol to compare to them.
I saw this thing where IU was, when they did that Naka song, and in her interview, she was like, I don't know how I can sing some of their songs.
Oh.
And this was IU
IU,
saying that
yeah.
because they were like, they write these melodies and they're really difficult for anybody to hit.
Lee Chanya kind of got into a phase recently. Yeah. What's up with that?
What's the phase? What's the phase, Haley? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing this is not a phase, mom. Phase.
It's I want to be G-Dragon, but I don't.
It's not a phase. Yeah. But it's amusing. It's some of the, I don't know what, it's kind of like an artwork that he wants to present, right?
It feels like he's evolving, he's changing, and he's going through different styles from like acoustic singer-songwriter to pop, now to like this synthwave, retro wave, and his performances.
Which was a bit too weekendish for my liking. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I didn't listen to The Weeknd that much, so maybe that's why I'm getting into that. Every Weeknd song sounded the same. There's How Old I Am, but yeah, I like seeing that evolve. So, what about you then? So you're not an Akmu fan. You told me about only one of Libido, but what are you listening to, Haley?
I honestly,
when you're not being a serial killer.
Yeah, as much as I like to bash lazy, noisy music, I kind of enjoy them. It's kind of like, that's why I always say like NCT songs is just so, the songwriting is lazy a lot of the times, but I actually enjoy their songs. They're so noisy. And they're kind of like really good for working out because it's just pure shouting, just energy, right? I love noise music.
Can you tell me about NCT? Like, I'm confused a little bit about them. I don't know much about them, but I know they're super popular, and my students were like, NCT, yeah.
They're actually not that popular as much. They're not as popular as they were supposed to be.
Okay.
Yeah. They were launched by SM Entertainment. They were supposed to be the successors of the TVXQ, Shiny, EXO.
They were the next one in line.
In Korean, we say like the eldest son position, like the most legitimacy. They were supposed to succeed that legitimacy. But I would have to admit their music's a bit cryptic. Once you kind of get, you kind of like what, I wonder what they were trying to achieve here.
Yeah.
But once you kind of know what each band in K-pop is doing, I think at one point you listen to a song and you can kind of recognize it's NCT. It's also because of the members' distinct voice, but also the style. When they cannot stand a moment of silence, so if there's like any moment with like no strong percussions, they just start shouting. And I kind of love the audacity of it. They're just like, here it's empty, so they're like, okay.
They have subunits as well. I think that's why I get confused by them.
Yeah. Just think of it as like a huge football group, and the director, I guess, is Lee Suman of SM Entertainment. He just picks out some of the boys to form this project.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And some of them have to be benched. Yeah. For a long time.
How many members in total, NCT?
23.
23. There is a football team,
Yeah, and a
basically, isn't it?
referee.
And a referee, yeah, or a manager. Like,
Yeah.
on you go. There you go. Wow. And I guess staying up to date, I mean, 7 members or 4 or 5 members is you can get that, right? It's 23 members is going to be hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's something. Can we talk about this is a weirdly unsmooth segue, but we'll try it anyway from NCT to cultural appropriation. Because the reason I'll ask about this is a lot of my international students, and they've even done presentations on it, about the cultural appropriation of black music, and these might be black students themselves or African Americans. They're like, I don't like this music. They don't let me into the clubs, and I'll stand up and say these things in the lectures. There'll also be talk about hairstyles and things like this and various imagery. Then in Korea, students will be like, you should wear a hanbok. Like, we want you to sing arirang. We want you to do our culture. So there seems to be this disconnect between international audiences want K-pop to be sensitive to cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
But in Korea, that's just like doing a concept. It's like, let's do Indian concept. Let's do this concept. Let's dress up. Let's do that. And there's this big disconnect going on. And then you have to ask the question, well, who gets authorship? Who gets agency? How do you solve that problem? If the entertainment companies start being sensitive to cultural appropriation just to make bank from international fans, are they doing a good thing? Even if they have like ulterior motives just to get money, but they're still being... Do you see that as an important conversation? Because I know it's important to some people. Other people don't care. But
I think the Korean public still doesn't care that much. Yeah.
they don't get it here.
There's
not
they
really a
don't
term for it or a
understand it,
word
right.
for it that resonates.
Right. There's like this translated term that doesn't really quite resonate. And also the big thing is like Koreans are so used to seeing or encouraging foreigners to wear hanbok and like try out our culture. So they don't think of it as something offensive. I think definitely it's because there is a history of violence, but not as well taught and also not as serious as the US. I want to say not as serious, but just like in terms of levels of violence. So I don't think Koreans there's been a very sizable minority group in Korea that has this violent history associated with them. But I still do see a problem. There was a time when half-black celebrities were told to cover their hair when they were on TV. There's still a singer called In-Suni, and her father was an American GI, right? In like the 50s, like stationed in Korea. And so she's obviously half black, half Korean, and she has curly hair. She was told to like cover her hair when she was on TV in the 90s, right? And I think Korea is also responsible for that. So to say that like K-pop idols wearing black hair isn't like black hairstyles is not the same as white people doing blackface because we don't have a history. That's the common defense, but it's not. Like we do have some responsibility, and I think a lot of people just don't know about this history up until the 90s, right? So I think a lot of people don't kind of feel that historical burden. And obviously, foreign fans are just discovering this art form that used to be consumed by just one group of people. And now there's so many standards flocking in. So I also understand it must be tricky for producers who have never studied about this to like fit into all of them, right? I'm assuming if some Western artists were to do it, it would be controversial. Like, there would be controversy. Nicki Minaj, remember Chun-Li? Some people were defending her for many different reasons, but I didn't see the same energy that's given to K-pop idols appropriating other cultures, right?
Yeah. It just becomes even like one thing in a video or one hairstyle and the internet seems to erupt. I think that might just be the internet being the internet sometimes. I guess one of the reasons why I'm curious about it is that my daughter, Elizabeth, who is 6 years old. She likes doing braids and things like this, and I'm just wondering about hairstyles and going
Korean
forward.
braids.
Well, yeah. I had to ask one of my students who also does it. I was like, by the way, what do you call that hairstyle that you have? And she's like, these braids. I'm like, braids, okay. It's
Dreadlocks, Dad.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to learn and stay up to date. And what sense? Elizabeth, by the way, 6 years old. She can sing Cookie. I came home one day and she's singing. I know. And
That's like that was me when I was like 10 singing S&M in front of my parents, and they don't get the English slang. They do speak English, but what were we all thinking back then?
I have memories of me jumping around the living room singing the Village People, YMCA, and things like that, because like this is cultural appropriation. There's like a sailor and an army man. It's the most interesting thing to look at. And
Yeah.
I wonder what my parents must have thought when you do all that. Yeah. So cultural appropriation, that's a difficult one. Do you want to hit Omega X?
I actually liked their music before this scandal. So
How big would you say? We talked about like average and medians, and there's obviously superstars in the K-pop industry, but how many? Before we hit Omega X, is there a sense of tiers? Like we talk about sometimes celebrities, we talk about A-list, B-list, and things like that.
yeah.
Do you get a sense of the depth or the scope? Does it really go off a cliff quickly once you get past the top 10 acts, or is there depth?
Yeah. In Korea, the tier is usually based on album sales.
Okay.
For girl groups, it's usually a bit trickier because, people tend to buy fewer albums from girl groups because they're not as loyal. It's changing, but I think...
Is that because girls buying girls, they'd rather buy boys?
No,
Is
girls...
it a gender thing or not?
It used to be because back in the day, female acts usually had male fans, male boy bands, male boy bands. Male groups had more of female fans, and usually female fans are more loyal. And I would also go back to the pink tax, just like this willingness to prove their love, right? Mm-hmm. Nowadays, girl groups are seeing more sales too, almost catching up. But I would say outside of the top 10, still boy bands who are a bit smaller in terms of, popularity, they still sell more albums. Like Omega X sold 100,000 albums. That was kind of like not many groups sell that. There's like a handful of groups that sell million sellers, right? So they're the top tier, and there's below that, and then usually like 50,000, then 100,000 is kind of like the tier milestones.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Omega X, they're reaching that tier milestone.
They reached that quite a significant milestone, especially coming from a very small agency. And I actually did like their music. It's also very noisy.
Lazy shouting.
Yeah.
Lazy shout. Cheek mask.
But it was like they put a bit more effort into shouting. They shout, but they care about what they shout.
So what's the story with Omega X for those? Because I tried to keep up to that. I think the first thing that I saw was those the videos coming out, and it felt very much like the Korean Air videos of the Gapjil that was always on the news. People shouting in construction yards and managers just like screaming at people. What's the Omega X story for us?
Wait, sorry a second. I'm sorry, my boss.
Yeah. Tell your boss you're doing something about K-pop right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming they think it's a productive way to spend time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hopefully they let me write a bit more of deep dives. Sadly. Okay, Omega X, where do we start? Jeez. So this is a very interesting group. They have 11 members, and all of them debuting as Omega X. It was their second, if not third, debut for them. So they've all belonged to other audition programs.
Oh, wow.
Or not even audition programs. They've all belonged to some kind of boy band that debuted prior and didn't see much success. You're seeing a lot of them recently, too, with audition shows. Produce in the early stages used to be fresh faces that the public didn't know about, and that was kind of the appeal. Now it's like K-pop idols with more than 5 years of being in like the mainstream K-pop industry. Now they're trying to make another challenge in the scene. So these men were also kind of...
Are audition shows still a thing? I thought Produce 101 and all the rigging scandals and all of that would have just killed it
It's
off.
a zombie. It's coming back. In
Okay.
February, Mnet is going to launch Boys Planet 999, if you remember Girls Planet. And I actually want to talk about this, about when we were talking about, what were we talking about? Like they expect Koreanness. So this audition was open to everyone around the world.
Okay.
And all the
Boys Planet 999, you mean?
All 98 contestants are Asian or half Asian.
Sure, it's got to
Which
be an
is
Asian
interesting.
body.
Yeah,
It's gotta be an Asian body.
that's a very interesting thing. What I'm really surprised about is how it's dying out in Korea, but there's still a lot of white worshipping in society. A lot of
I don't feel it.
ooh, blinded by his privilege, everybody. But I think it still remains in the fact that basically every one of those half Asians are half white. I think white supremacy remains in that aspect, but it's also it's really interesting that everyone has to be somewhat Asian to be recognized as K-pop material.
I agree with that.
Right.
There's something about the Asian body.
Yeah. So, wait, we were talking about the challenging yourself once again. Now we're into
Stay on what is it called? Boys
Planet 999.
Boys Planet 999. Why should I watch? Are you going to watch this?
I'm like kind of interested because there's a lot of groups that have already been in the K-pop scene for a long time and they're starring as contestants again. I would watch it for that. Yeah.
I remember when one of my radio things, I spoke to one of the producers from Project Runway Korea, and she said, what you have to remember, she was talking about Project Runway and these things, but she said, you have to remember that it's not a competition between the contestants. It's a competition between the producers. That season 2 has to be better than season 1. That season 3 has to be better than season 2. The real competition, she said when she was explaining this, was the behind the scenes, the directors, the producers, to get more figures, to get more hits, to get more whatever it might be, the metrics. That's the real competition, she said. The front is just smoke and mirrors.
Sadly, the rigging thing. Proved it to be true. Like people who are supposed to debut were already determined, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, Girls Planet 999 came back with the promise that they were going to be more transparent. They actually announced this partnership with this professional accounting company. It's like it's basically like the Merrill Lynch of accounting companies in Korea. So now, like, if there's another rigging thing, this big legit organization is also going to be in jeopardy. So I think they're going to... Why would we rig again when we're both going down in that case?
Because they would have to... It's really amazing that they got an accounting company. Yeah. Just to say, look, we know... That's how serious that stuff was. People invested money and time into that just for it to be rigged. So Omega X, that's why we went to Boys Planet 999, right? That's why I like talking to you, because I learn about these things that I otherwise would not have heard of.
Are you going to watch Boys now?
I'll now it will register in my brain when I see it online, and I'll remember this conversation. I'll probably watch some of it. I have to try to stay up to date and not be blinded by my white privilege, Haley.
Yeah.
Omega X had members that had already debuted.
Yeah, and re-debuted.
And their shouting was good.
Yeah, their shouting was good. They looked like they really wanted to succeed. I could feel the sincerity. None of them were lazy. They really wanted this to work out.
But the story that you was writing about, and that also went across the media, was...
and this group actually was one of the fastest growing K-pop groups, especially considering they came from like a no-name agency. Reached the 100,000 copies sold milestone, and then this wasn't even like the members coming out first. This fan on Twitter, like in LA, after like this group was having a concert, she just I guess ran across 11 Asian men and this Asian woman screaming at them, and like I guess it would stand out in LA.
Yeah.
I don't know, LA's very Asian, but I'm assuming that scene stood out. So she recorded it and put it on Twitter saying, I think like my favorite idol was getting beaten up in an alley. Yeah, and it became impossible to ignore. I think the company at first tried to sweep it under the rug. by saying like there was just misunderstanding, emotions were running high, this happened. And then like apparently behind the scenes they canceled all the flight tickets for the members to come back from the US to Korea.
Oh, wow.
So they had to pay for their own flight tickets. Asking, and they said during their press conference, allegedly, they had to ask parents for the flight ticket.
Why was the manager chewing them out? Was there a reason? Did they perform badly? Was there something that's gone wrong? Did they? Was it just the manager was an
I
arsehole?
think she was just one of those, I don't know, kapjil syndromes. You get into some people are just like that, and they find themselves in a position where they can do that. So I mean, apparently she's always been writing some questionable stuff on her social media, allegedly,
Yes,
right?
very good.
Allegedly. And she just found herself in a position where she was the wife of the CEO, apparently. She wasn't even the CEO. She was the wife who basically, I think the couple ran the entertainment firm together virtually. And it had been going on for like a year. So the members said actually the beginning was okay. And it just got really bad about a year later, and the abuse continued for like a year. That's what they're claiming. I'm not really surprised that their early phase was okay because a lot of abuse starts like that, right? And I think it was most shocking that it was verbal, physical, sexual harassment, just calling them up late at night, forcing them to drink with them and like touching their faces and thighs, which like why would you do that? Like a middle-aged woman basically just harassing boys just
She sounds like a
talking.
pimp or something.
No, she sounds like
Allegedly.
a pedophile. Alleged reported pedophile.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old are the members of Omega X? Sorry for not knowing.
The oldest is like 27-ish. The youngest is 21-ish.
There is this thing that, you sometimes see it, and it's not just in Korean society, it's all around the world, but sometimes when someone's chewing someone out in Korea, the other person just stands there and takes it. There's this power distance, this thing you described as kapjil, right? This power distance where people will just take it from other people without pushing
Look at
it
Harvey
back.
Weinstein. He was
it's
able
not
to get,
unique to
it's
Korea.
not, I think it's just power.
Right.
But there's definitely also this Korean element where that producer was nowhere as powerful as Harvey Weinstein. But I think society kind of conditions, especially young people, to take it.
Yeah, because if you're 27, I think you're not. You need to be in charge of yourself by
But
then.
you're also conditioned to never talk back to people older than you. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to stop believing in Santa Claus at some point, and you have to.
I know, but I'm assuming. But if you listen to their stories, at first, obviously, it's kind of a lot like the Me Too movement. A lot of people would say, "Why are you coming out with this now?" A lot of people really wanted to realize their dreams of stardom. They've tried 2-3 times. They've debuted 1 or 2 times before. Didn't work out. They thought this was their last chance. And the thing is, if you're a celebrity, you just don't win in a lawsuit and be happy about it. It pretty much crushes your public image, right?
Yeah.
I think that I completely understand why they had to agree to unfair conditions and couldn't speak up, right? I just felt really sorry for them.
And to their credit, they did eventually come out and say this is going on. And
Oh
this
yeah,
is-
we kind of stopped at they had to pay for their own flights back to Korea, and then they got together and hired a law firm to represent them.
What was the reaction to them? Exposing this treatment, this psychological, physical, and sexual abuse that they'd been receiving. How did people react? Because people will lose their minds over it. Did people come out and start cancelling the entertainment company, or?
I think what shocked a lot of the people was actually I actually didn't think they would answer, but towards the end, no one was asking it, so I actually just stood up and asked, "Have you ever experienced this in your previous debuts?" And they were hesitant at first, and I'm kind of happy that I gave them like a chance to like unleash the bombshell of the conference. Like the biggest news from the conference was that this happened in other agencies too, and it kind of became a news story on its own too. Like the former agency assaulted the members, stopped him from going to like his grandpa's funeral,
Oh God.
confiscated his phone, and he would just like hesitant at first and then start just dropping all of these like that he couldn't say, and would come out with more allegations after the conference. I'm kind of upset because I feel like if Omega X was a bit bigger, if their career had gotten a bit bigger, it would have been a bigger news story.
Yeah.
But first of all, they were still a growing group. That's why the public was like, "Oh, that's shocking, that's horrible." But I think it kind of lost the buzz really quickly. And also a lot of it was no one was really surprised. Like, it's shocking when you hear about it, but then it's kind of like, "Oh, that's disturbing," but not surprising. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, yeah.
Right, because again, what I said, this industry grew up so big and like seemingly glamorous, but a lot of the people have the same way they worked since the 90s, right? A lot of them are really used to this top-down oppressive system where you just do what you're told. Yeah, especially considering a lot of heads of agencies, the founders, used to be managers themselves since the 90s or the early 2000s when treatment was just so inhumane, right? And that was the norm.
And the worrying thing is, I mean, that it worked. I mean, if you look at what careers, I'm not justifying it or condoning it, but even more broadly across Korean society, the place was run like a military base, essentially.
Because how else do you keep 12 people stick thin and completely disciplined and practicing? Like, if you allow freedom, it's kind of like how the Korean economy grew. If you allow freedom and if you allow them to chill, you can't grow that fast, right? That's kind of like the dilemma of a dictatorship. Yeah.
And Korean society values are definitely changing. I think values are changing now because people have not only more material resources and financial independence, but they also have different ideas in their mind, right? And so it requires Korean society, I think, certain values to catch up, that those old ideas of top-down and power and direction, they might have worked in the past. And those ideas about how Korean people are meant to study and go to hagwons, that was the message, but it doesn't work today. I don't think people want that message. They realize that, hey, come on, that's not right in 2023.
Yeah.
So it's good that they stand up. There's this idea of politics. I'm glad that the men of Omega X did that. And you said perhaps if they were bigger, there might have been more ramifications.
Right.
In Korea, the way I understand it, K-pop is pretty apolitical.
Yeah.
Like, so in the beginning, there was definitely a push to make it political. If you look at Sotaeji or even some of the groups after that, they would have some political messages.
That was even more a social message, not a political one.
That's correct, actually. I misspoke. But it was addressing those ideas. In the international sphere, K-pop is sometimes seen as political. It's associated with progressive movements. It might be shutting down White Lives Matter or these kind of things.
They're assigned these values, right?
Yeah, they're assigned these values, but domestically it's not. Should K-pop take a political stance, or should these people come out and help try to move Korean society towards things, because they have this huge, especially the A-list stars, right? They have a lot of sway, and if they say something, it gets reported across all of that.
Right.
But they won't say anything about sort of anti-discrimination acts or whatever it might be. Should they do that, or it's not their responsibility?
First of all, I think Korean fans are not, for a fact, Korean fans don't want to see that from there. So I'm not sure whatever they say, it's not going to have a big impact on Korean fans. And they're not saying anything now, but foreign fans assign them values anyway, right? So they could say something, let's say pro-LGBT, and the foreign fans would be saying, "Oh, you were a gay icon already among us. Like, you might have not known that." Right?
We've been shipping you like Snape and
Dumbledore.
Dumbledore, sorry.
Yeah, we've already been shipping you.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of Korean fans would turn their backs if they got too political. Yeah, some of them might stay. Right. I think they just want to they don't want to see anything that might give them a headache from, which is ironic because the reason that I mentally checked out of a lot of boy band songs like 2 years 2 years ago, last year. It's like, I listen to music for like to be happy. Like I don't want to listen to your childhood trauma and paranoia and anxiety. Like, why is everyone singing about childhood trauma?
because it's vibing at the moment. That's how you make money. It's like you must talk about intergenerational trauma.
Yeah,
That's the big what my students love that.
Yeah.
Intergenerational trauma. I feel the trauma of the Korean War. And then it's a thing.
yeah.
I as we bring this towards one kind of more social issue that we haven't hit, I think I saw this meme from you originally, which was you people would stan a squirrel if it was Korean.
It was about
Was
Joongang.
Was that
the
about
footballer.
Yeah, Joongang.
Footballer number 9.
Even my sister-in-law was all over him. Viral oppa, she was calling him, and things like that.
Honestly, it lacked a bit of persuasion because it was Cho Gyu-sung. I think we can't compare him to a squirrel. He deserves the standing.
Yeah. I agree. He's good football. Scoring goals on the biggest stage like that, looks aside. I think I said, I can't remember, I was quoted in the Washington Post or Times or something like that he was breaking stereotypes of what Asian footballers should be because he was powerful and he was pushing back against figures like Ronaldo, right? He was showing a different image of what Asian people could be, and I really like that. Is there a form of, I don't know how to answer this question politely. We know concepts like yellow fever, but is there a form of yellow fever that plays out? Because I've recently discovered how popular Korean gay vlogs are amongst international audiences.
It is?
Yeah. Some people doing research on
Explains
it.
BL.
People doing research on it, and these videos get like millions of views. It seems that whatever Korea is doing at the moment, people are into it.
Yeah,
right? So it could be literature, it could be mukbang, it could be
Makeup, it
makeup.
could be beauty products. Yeah, it's
Yeah. I'm trying to find someone to talk about Korean beauty and makeup actually, but I haven't found someone yet.
You can talk to me. I spent way too much money on it. Then I found out, the paint won't make a difference as long as you have the same canvas. Yeah.
You can change your canvas.
Yeah.
We were just talking, you
yeah.
can change your
Enough
canvas.
money.
Yeah. Go on then. I'll talk to you. Like, you brought it up. So, how hard is it? How much do you spend on beauty products?
I used to until college, up until before COVID. I would say that. And recently, I actually had this rant while following my friend into an Olive Young. I was supposed to just make a remark, but then
walking.
Yeah, as usual, I got into a rant in Olive Young Gangnam and said, I feel like these products are all the same. It's just different colored paint. A lot of the advertising kind of like taps into your insecurity, taps into your anxiety of like not looking like other people, not looking as good. And if you wear this product, which is basically red paint that goes on your mouth, you will look like whoever is trending at the moment, right? And I feel like after COVID, I realized how many staple products I use and how many I just really didn't need. Right? And after that, it just kind of started looking like paint to me. But with the packaging, with the advertisement, it just comes with so many fantasies we want to achieve. Yeah. But without that, it was just really selling insecurity. And my friend told me to shut up.
Shut up and buy the lipstick.
Shut up! I'm trying to pay.
Did you buy anything in Olive Young Gangnam?
I just find myself replacing products I used to use, like that fits my skin. Yeah, whatever.
I'll give you one TMI then before we go on to this. I didn't do it, but someone gave it to me. Like you would put on a face mask or something like that, right? But this was a foot mask. You put these kind of slippers on, and they're liquid, and they
mask.
Yeah, but for your feet.
Yeah.
Right, because I'm running a lot, and my feet are getting kind of dry with age and winter, and they're getting bruised as I exercise. But it was like a foot mask.
Your foot has to look good.
Oh, it was
dysmorphia.
Like liquefying my foot. I was like, wow, that's. I never knew these things exist, but they do.
Yeah.
There's a foot mask. I don't know if that's the correct term, but you know what I'm talking about.
I think it's called a foot mask.
It's called a foot mask. Yeah. Okay. So that's Jo Gyu-sung and foot masks and rants in Gangnam Olive Young's. How much of this Hallyu trend is based on a form of fetishization of? Is that incorrect? Is that an insensitive way? How much is it based on that?
I would say a lot of the times people getting into it, there's a level of exoticness. Like, I think they can't help it. A lot of the times, it's the first time they're hearing about Korea through K-pop, right? Or these hot Korean people that sucks them into this becoming a Koreaboo. I think it really depends on after you've had that first encounter, how much you're really willing to understand the society. I think I think I respect my Koreaboo friends. I tease them for being Koreaboos, but there's a lot of them who actually want to understand the society.
Yeah.
So maybe their first encounter was they just thought Girls' Generation was hot, but after that, it's either you stay in that zone of just fantasizing these people, not thinking that they're real people. They just kind of exist to fulfill your fantasy, or you start seeing that this is like a real society. Right, and the same goes with Japan too. There's a lot of people who just use Japan as like what their fantasy would like to be. There was like these tweets are like, there were no homeless people in Tokyo because you went to the most bougiest tourist attractions. And I know they probably dream of a society where none of these stuff exists, none of the bad stuff exists, and they kind of project that into Japan because they can, because they don't know they don't know enough to see the less than flattering aspects.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's knowledge, and then it's what there is that initial pull to something which might be based on superficial or exotic tendencies, but then some people take it further and they look into it and they learn and they study. With the term Koreaboo, I might ask like Korean students, is it possible for a foreign person to love Korea too much? And they're like, no, please love us more. But they don't get the term Koreaboo sometimes because it's a foreign concept to them.
Right.
We hear the term Koreaboo, we have all these negative connotations, but a young Korean adult university doesn't necessarily know what a Koreaboo is.
Yeah.
And when it's explained to them, they're like, what? So they love Korea and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's kind of like they kind of think of it as Koreans who just love Hollywood. Right?
Yeah, yeah. I want to see your reaction to this. Jacko Zwetzler, I don't know if you know Jacko, but he messaged me the other day. He said, David, you should have Ollie London on your podcast.
Oh my God, is that Jimin? They say I look like Jimin. I say, oh my God, it's like Jimin. It's true. I look like Jimin.
Bottle of water.
Bottle of water.
That's a pretty good English impression.
Yeah.
You're allowed to do that because
true.
you live there. You live
yeah,
there. Yeah. That's
it's
not
true.
cultural
I look like
appropriation.
Jimin. This is Ollie appropriation.
Yeah. Should I ask him? He's done this weird. So I had a look because I've never really talked about him or spoken about.
Is he in Korea?
No, I do it just.
I praise the Lord.
I think he's become a far right newborn Christian, and renounced everything Korean.
Oh. Wait,
He's gone on a right-wing grift.
I thought it was most Korean to become a far-right Christian.
Yeah.
I was about to say he became a true Korean, but then he renounced everything Korean?
He's gone that way, I think.
Is he going to undo all the plastic surgery?
I don't know. I mean, I know that I've mentioned his name in class before with international students, and there's just been this noise that descends across the lecture hall, like, oh my God.
Hey, it's an art form at that point.
I think so.
I'm actually offended when things are just, some things are just poorly executed and offensive. But I appreciate it when it gets, like, really crazy.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes when I think, like, you can't make that up. Like, that's just has to be a troll at that point. I appreciate it. It becomes art.
Yeah. and it gets in the news. It makes people talk. It works because if you're going to do something, you have to push it to a level. And he was certainly going there with some of that stuff.
I need to look up Ollie London now. He's born again. So he's like basically now Tommy Lauren, like a far right actor.
I don't know who Tommy Lauren is.
Candace Owens.
I know.
Those figures.
Okay. I know Candace Owens a little bit, but that was my impression, and so I'm not quite sure. So some people would stand a squirrel if it was Korean. That's a brilliant meme.
Yeah.
What's Can we? I want to ask you this question about society as we bring it towards the end. Like, we talk about Ollie London and international fans, and there's this online narrative about Korea, and it's either, the narratives about Korea that really work is either Korea is amazing, and you get all those photos of Lotte Towers, all the photos, or Bucheon Hanok Village, or Korea is terrible and people are killing themselves and men are killing women in toilets and the old people are dying alone and it's this dystopian Squid Game.
Yeah.
There's these two kind of narratives that really resonate very easily across social media.
Yeah.
I actually gave my visiting international students, these students from Singapore, I had 50 of them. I was like, I bet when you take photos, you'll take photos like one of those. But the photo in the middle is like the real Korea. But nobody ever takes those photos. Or if
Yeah.
you do take those photos and share them, everyone's like, that's not very exciting, is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
You live here. You work here. What's your take on sort of the country? Does it satisfy you? Are you like, yeah, this is my home. This is good. I'm adjusting to the patriarchy and it's terrible. That was your term. I like it.
No,
by the way.
I was accused of it. I don't
You were
think of
accused
myself.
of it. Yes, I'm sorry. Allegedly.
Yeah.
What's your take on Korean society in general, Haley? Like, as someone that lives here and works here.
It's always easiest to go in one narrative. It's just the easiest and most appealing to stick to. I think people they're gonna believe what they want to see. They're gonna only see what they want to see on social media.
What do you see?
I see people capitalizing on presenting it as a fantasy land, and I also see people capitalizing on just muckraking. Basically, there's some reporters or influencers who just really capitalize off of that, just only basically shedding light or exaggerating the bad aspects. It's honestly based on what where I've lived in my life. Everything's like a mix, like everything's the average of two sides. So I remember, I've obviously lived in the UK when I was like in elementary school. So I kind of had like
Primary school.
Yeah, primary school.
Primary school, mate.
Cuddington Primary School. Yeah. And not Paddington. So I think I had like an understanding of Britain. It's just like cloudy. Some people are kind of sometimes nice. Sometimes they pee on our wall after watching a football game. David thinks it was him, the man I saw in my childhood, right? Yeah. But then I'd never been to the U.S. at that point. So remember in middle school, I watched Iron Man when Marvel was starting to get buzz.
Okay.
And it begins with this amazing scene with Iron Man in Las Vegas. I thought all of the U.S. was going to be like Las Vegas.
Is that Iron Man 2?
Iron Man 2, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the opening scene. And I had this fantasy of the U.S. And then my dad said I got stationed in the U.S. to work there for 4 years. So we're going there next, I think 2 months from now. It was
Is that a military thing? Am I allowed to ask
no,
that?
he works for the government.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically just put there. And I was just so excited. I thought it was going to be this fantasy land that the most extraordinary cities that Marvel wants to show you, which is basically computer generated.
Did you go to Nebraska or something?
No, I went to New Jersey. And worse,
Okay.
I went to the NYC subway. I was like, where's these well-dressed people in Las Vegas? There's a crackhead staring at me. And
What did the crackhead say?
no, he doesn't
Give
say
me crack.
anything. It was just, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, New York City's dirtier than a lot of people think. The streets are a bit dirtier depending on where you go. Subways, not even depending on where you go, is just so run down. I remember my fantasy was just completely broken, right? And there's also areas with so much poverty there too, which looking back is obvious.
Yeah.
But it might not be too obvious even to grown people when they kind of get to hear about a society they don't know at all. So I'm assuming that's what some foreigners think of Korea. At the end of the day, Korea also has its Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Also has its well-dressed Iron Man, Tony Stark, glamorous people, and also has its crackhead staring at you.
I was waiting for that.
Or taking a photo of you peeing. Yeah.
Which is probably worse than a crackhead, isn't it?
I get multitasking crackhead.
Yeah. Crackheads with technology.
Yeah.
Crackheads 2.0.
Yeah,
Yeah. Crackheads in the metaverse.
yeah.
Something like that. The crackerverse. No, that sounds right.
Oh
That's
my
that's
God.
not quite right. But yeah, I get what you're saying. There's a reality, there's fantasies, there's realities, and there's everything in between. Korea, you mentioned some of the dangers of living in Korea as a young woman. Korea feels pretty clean and safe to me. Not
Yeah.
perfect,
Yeah.
but you check the subways, the hospitals, the dentists,
Right.
the streets. I mean, it feels pretty clean and safe to me
Seoul
for a capital
too.
city.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say outside of Seoul is always less polished, but I would just say there's more gaps.
Yeah.
Right. Like I always kind of judge like a facility or an institution by their bathroom.
Yeah,
In
sure.
Seoul, wherever you go, sometimes it's like a palace. Like this bathroom is better than my room.
Yeah.
And outside of Seoul, some of the new places have basically like the same really nice new shining places, but you also don't know what you're gonna get. Like it's more unpredictable.
Me and you both spend a lot of time outside of Seoul in the countryside.
Yeah,
I was in
yeah.
the countryside this morning. When I first came, squatters were the norm.
What's countryside to you?
Countryside to me is a place called Wonthong, which is above the 38th parallel. It's in Gangwon-do. It's next to
Wonthong?
Wonthong,
Yeah,
next
yeah.
to Inje. I was there this morning.
It's where a bunch of military bases.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when you realize that the Cold War's a reality. But they've got a CG. They have a CGV. They have like 4 CUs in the village, so you can get your Nege Manwon beers and things like that, which was not the case in the past. But it does seem to be cleaner and much nicer here.
A big part is Korea really steps up its presentation every time there's an international event. Seoul Olympic in 1988 was a big thing. That's when a lot of like these horrible bathrooms got fixed.
Yeah.
Then the second one was obviously World Cup. Then there was the G20 in 2010. I remember the government was telling us not to dispose our food waste, and the people were like, "I'm gonna throw out my food waste."
Yeah.
Then for Gangwon was one of the least. It still is the least privileged areas. Like the GDP I heard is the same as Ghana. Which,
Yeah,
all
really
respect
surprised
to Ghana, but like compared to the other areas of Korea, it's just very disproportionate.
Yeah.
I feel that too. My parents live there, but in like a city area of Gangwon, but still you go outside there and you see how much of a different story it is. Yeah, but then Pyeongchang Olympic changed a lot for the area. Like it got its first high-speed railway in 2018 because of the Olympics. Before that, there was no railway going there.
I did and I still do a lot of the work for the Pyeongchang Olympic Committee in terms of translations and proofreading and things like that, the English materials. And I'm forever doing these materials saying it's the Asian winter sports hub and things like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's not. Are you talking about the same Gangwon that I'm looking at? Because it doesn't surprise me. It's just been made, this is well off the K-pop track, but Gangwon has just been made it's become like Jeju.
Yeah.
So it's become like a special region. It can define its own policies and things like that.
Yeah.
Right? That's good for it. Yeah, that's the countryside. You and your dogs.
Yeah, my dogs. Who used to be Seoul dogs.
Who used to be Seoul dogs, but
Yeah.
they did Tal Seoul. And
Yeah, they did tell Seoul, and they're much happier.
Yeah. They look happy in your stories. I like that.
They look so much happier than when they were in Seoul. Yeah.
So we talked about the safetyness of Korea. We met a while ago in a cafe to talk about futures.
Yeah.
And what does the future hold for Haley spelt correctly Yang?
Yeah.
Like where are you going to go with
I
this?
will try to make more video essays No, I will try. Not if I can, I will. Try to put more content. Recently, what I'm actually thinking of, it might sound silly, but I wanted to do a deep dive into where Korean curse words come from. And like the hook is, why is every K-drama character saying seki so much?
Yeah.
Or the C word.
I just all of a sudden wanted to say fuck yeah, but I was like, how would I say that in Korean? It's very interesting.
I don't know, but
Do the etymology of Korean swear words. Yeah, brilliant.
I pitched it to the newspaper and like, we're going to censor out half of the words in the article. And I guess, I don't know, is YouTube going to ban me for saying seki? Half of the videos
I've
are
seen
beep.
on YouTube, one of my favorite ones is that little kid and they're like trying to tell it to say daddy's shoes. And
Wait,
he's like,
why is everyone
"Appa-
telling me that reel
appa
recently?
shibal, appa shibal."
That reel, I looked it up and it's 2 years old.
It's well old, yeah, but it's on there and it's popular, so people are swearing.
And I
a
think
lot.
the kid was doing it intentionally because she never says "Omma."
I think the kid, I don't know, at that age, I'm not really sure. I think the parents were
Throwing
just
shade at
encouraging
dad.
it. Yeah, I think the parents were just encouraging it. I don't swear in the house, right? So
Yeah.
I'm pretty. I swear in the pub like a sailor, but I've never sworn in front of my mum. I don't swear in the house. A friend of mine who I play music with, Nicky Biscuits. What a name, huh? Nicky
Yeah.
Biscuits. He swears in the house all the time, and apparently his kids are running around going like "f this" and "f that,"
It's like,
because they just
yeah.
repeat whatever they
Khloe
hear.
Kardashian said, "My mom cursed so much, I thought my name was fuck." Yeah. In keeping up with the Kardashians, yeah.
So I would love to read because I've never read that actually, and I've never seen any work on that. I remember when I first came to Korea, and I'd be watching Super Action, like the movie
Yeah.
channels and things, and
Half of the line is just 이버새끼야.
but no, it would just translate the whole time as like
Bastard.
전쟁. Every time somebody swore in English.
젠장.
젠장. Sorry.
But
yeah.
that, like, no one says that in real
But
life.
that was my point, and that's why I've
Yeah.
forgotten it. And I was trying to, how would I swear? And they always use this like colorless word that nobody says, which is why I don't hear it. So yeah, do that.
It's changing, though. Subtitles are getting better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are absolutely getting better. Don't just do video essays. Like I'm doing one tomorrow, and it's like we're going to do like GoPros in the streets with faces and talking. And you're going to be in your video content, so you're going to do it.
I'm not sure. I just want to do like visual aids and my voiceover. Cause
Do some Ollie London impressions. You're good at that. I quite
I've
enjoyed
kind of
that.
developed
I
it
quite
as my
enjoyed that.
talent. Yeah.
Is there anything that we're missing from discussions on K-pop society as we bring this towards the final stretch? Is there anything that we've missed, Hayley, that we should touch on?
Well, I think there's also like a lot more to talk about how society affects K-pop.
Okay.
You know what I mean? We just briefly talked about why dating such a serious issue in K-pop, and we got into like what's the norm in Korean society. And I'm sure there's a lot of Korean, like some things deemed as Korean K-pop culture that's actually just like a summary of Korean society in general, right? Even like staying thin, that could be like a reflection. Pale, like why are these K-pop idols pale? It just basically becomes a bigger story. Yeah.
So society. So let me get this right. Rather than K-pop affecting Korean society, Korean society affects K-pop.
It's
So
usually always
like a
like that.
symbiotic
Yeah.
relationship. I
K-pop
guess.
doesn't have that much social authority and power in Korean society yet. They're popular. They're like recognized for making a lot of money, but I don't think they're powerful enough to influence society. That's why they can't say anything political, because they know they're in a position where they have to seek favor from the public instead of influencing them. So,
There's a word that I've forgotten now, and I'm suddenly so heavily conscious of my terrible Korean. The word that they call for entertainers or dancers or something like.
공인.
Yeah.
public figure, which is such a misused word. They're not public.
There's a different word that I'm thinking of because it's derogatory and it's just someone that
딴따라.
dances. Yeah, that kind of thing.
What do you? I don't know.
They're not seen as sort of like, I don't know, Bob Dylan's or Rage.
Like, I would have the same connotation as actress in the 1700s. You know what I mean? Like the British king's mistresses were actresses. Oh, she's an actress.
Yeah. I wonder if the current British king has any actresses.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But yeah, that relation. When you talk about this idea between K-pop and society, so I started this conversation by saying that academia gets some things wrong. It tries to be too clever. So let me give you this idea, which is that there's a difference between K content and Korean content. And we find a lot of stuff called K content that's marketed specifically for the international audience.
Yeah.
And so, and this is for financial reasons, because the market's out there. There's billions of people that want to buy this stuff, and their taste is different from domestic taste.
Yeah.
I think certain things, not just K-pop, but even stuff like Itaewon Class, right?
Yeah.
With, those not multiracial, but the character in that, whose name I forget, the half Ghanaian, half Korean, perhaps.
I think I saw a screenshot.
Yeah, and the transgender character and things like this. It's more appealing to international sensibilities.
Right.
And these are K contents. They're specifically designed for export.
Boys Planet 9992, they actually said it. Girls Planet 999 basically just was a total fail in Korea.
Yeah.
But the producers said, but it was so successful abroad, that's why we decided to make Boys Planet 999.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's K content. And then you get Korean content that is designed specifically for Korean sensibilities. So you get something like Nai Hebang Ilji or
Trot.
my Liberation Notes Trot
Yeah.
and things like that. And they're hitting, like in Korea, the big things are not necessarily about transgender characters or queer baiting or shipping, but it's about like power and tables and society and equality and fairness. They're the things. So I wonder that there's this split between K content specifically designed for the outside, Korean content's designed for this one. But then most people, they're accessing Korea through the K content, which is getting further and further away from the reality of what Korea is. And then you get, where is the authenticity? Where is the authorship and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. Even if it was aimed for the domestic audience, Boys Planet 999 would not have 50% foreign contestants. Because we're just so homogeneous. Like, maybe it sounds horrible, but we enjoy seeing one or two as novelty, right? But if it's more than half of them, they just completely lose interest. Like, this is not what we want. We enjoy. And if someone was to watch Boys Planet and they don't have like this knowledge, they might think this is a Korean show and half of the contestants are mixed race or like foreign, or they don't speak Korean, but they're accepted for the for who they are, their unique background, and even if they don't speak Korean, it's okay, right? And because it's like they said it's aimed for the foreign audience, they will have like a very different view of what Korean society is.
I'm going to use that example in my
Right.
research now. My academic, this Boys Planet 999. Thank
If you look at that audition show, Korea would look like some multi-ethnic, maybe not multiracial, but multi-ethnic heaven. But in Korea, even like racism against other Asians is extremely strong, right?
It is.
Forget about other races, right?
We said before we started just how anti-Chinese discourse is part of civil conversation and things like that. It just comes out. Sam Ochuri got cancelled for certain comments and things.
Yeah.
It's very different. Maybe the international tastes might help change Korea in some way. I'm not sure, but there is that real difference, isn't there, between the K content and the Korean content?
I think at least as of now, Korea would rather shut itself instead of I don't think they will be influenced by an outside force. Like you can't change anyone unless they want to change. That kind of applies.
That's
here.
true. Unless there's financial incentives, that also goes into it, I guess. There's when you talk about foreigners on TV, there's this, and we talked about cultural appropriation and things like this. There is this idea that what multiculturalism means in Korea is foreigners going on television and doing Korean stuff.
It's basically
It's cultural assimilation.
Yeah, it's
like
assimilation.
we want to see white people wearing hanboks and eating, I was going to say jajangmyeon, but that would be wrong. And eating bibimbap and going
kimchi.
to yeah, but that's what multiculturalism is here for a large part, isn't it?
Yeah,
Let's watch the foreigners do our stuff.
And though I think the beginning is, it might actually sound really wildly different, but the beginning is mail order brides. Koreans' expectations of what people who move here should do, the first encounter was mail order brides.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, a lot of people openly say, I bought you, so you better assimilate to my culture. Yeah. And the municipalities were actively encouraging it. They would make them learn Korean instead of the family learning any of their culture or language. This was like just this art level comedy that's not funny. There was a municipality that planned this event to take mail order brides to a Comfort Women Memorial, and to go through their suffering, like to understand their suffering, you become a true Korean.
Get
right?
the Han going.
Yeah, you get the Han sentiment, and now you're one of us. But are you really that different in terms that you're basically victims of human trafficking? Right.
That's what
That's so ironic.
Yeah. I completely agree. And so this is a phenomenon that happened in around the late 1990s, early 2000s, right? And it was a government-led policy to get women from Southeast Asia and other parts of China and Vietnam and marry them to much older men in the Korean countryside.
Right.
It all took place primarily under the Kim Dae-jung government, like the progressive, it's held as the progressive here. But you see the figures and they're absolutely mind-blowing in that the number of marriages between Korean women and foreign men have kind of stayed the same
Yeah.
throughout the last 20, 30 years. And you look at the reverse, Korean men and foreign women, and they're like this. For those listening, my hand is going in a straight horizontal line. And then you get to the 2000s and it just skyrockets. And
Yeah.
it's mail order bride, it's
And
sexual slavery.
after that, it plummets because not only the Korean government implemented some regulations, but these countries in Southeast Asia, they started implementing their own regulations because they see their women get exported basically and just abused. There's been a recent case of abuse against like a mail order bride. Right? I just don't even want to call them that.
Yeah. I'm hesitant because there will be some that came here as like economic migrants,
Right.
And they came here and they've settled in and they've found their life and
Right.
they've married and they might be living it. And to use that term for all of them, I'm a little bit scared. Do you see what I mean?
Right, because some people, like a lot of them, I feel like they also have a hard time because they're seen with like judgment when they actually just met naturally, whatever that means.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a really difficult thing. I'm not sure. There's more and more multiculturalism coming in. Thus far, I have two young children here, and they go to school, and they don't have Korean names. Like you see on the locker, and all the kids will have 3-syllable names.
Yeah.
And then you get to Edward, David, Tizzard.
Do they have Korean names?
No.
though? No.
I mean, I'm Denard, but I thought you should have one name. This is what your name is. I don't want you to have two identities. I want you to be. Did I do that? Do you have two names? Do you have,
Haley Hyunju.
you have a Korean name and an international name.
And it was not my fault. It was because people couldn't pronounce it.
What? Remind me your Korean name. Sorry.
Hyunju.
Hyunju.
So
That's
at least I kept the H, but I don't know where Haley came from. But that's another story.
I remember when we first did a podcast. I think I put Hyunju.
I would
and you were
never
like, no,
choose.
David,
I would
you have to
never
use Haley."
choose Haley as a name.
Well, you're Haley Yang now. Is there a difference between Hyunju and Haley?
Depends on who's calling me.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. What advice would you have, Haley, to young people? Say they want to become journalists like you, because I think I see a growing number of young women at the universities that want to go into media, want to go into broadcasting, they want to get into journalism. There might just be young people in general, but what advice would you give to young people in life, or to say a young 18-year-old Yang Hyunju or Haley?
Yeah. Right before this podcast, I was actually across the street in a cafe. I met someone from my some underclassman from Yonsei who called me up to get some advice. She's graduating soon and she really wants to get into journalism. So
You call them an underclassman.
yeah, I don't know what to say. Hube.
Yeah,
What do you,
it took
buddy?
me I get it now. Somebody
Opposite
younger
of
than you.
senpai. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone younger than me, and I just told her to like find your field that you're interested in, because apparently she sounded really talented in all of the fields. She has experience in covering sports, finance, everything, and she seemed equally interested. But I feel like at the end of the day, these days, you really have to have this one beat, right? One area that you're really interested in, because yeah, I feel like it's a job that's really hard to do unless you really have love for it. I also told her that realistically, you can't always write about what you want to, which is a trouble that I'm also going through. So at the end of the day, I need to have a field that it's worth maintaining my day job, doing work for the company. And then there also has to be a field that I find it worth being, like having this title as a reporter to dig deeper into. Right.
How do you navigate that difficulty of writing things that you don't want to versus writing things that you do? Because you mentioned that just briefly, that you might not always get to write what you want. What's your advice, or how should people navigate that?
I'm actually still working on it myself, right? I think, well, it might be unfair, but I'm just, at this point, I'm kind of telling myself that, well, no one's going to pay you to do exactly what you love. Yeah.
They
Right.
might.
They might, but not from the beginning.
No.
Right?
No.
With giving you all the access and connections. You can't just, you would love to, but realistically they won't let you just do what you want. So in the beginning, I would there's also some maybe experience I can earn from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you've got to work. There needs to be some work to get to
Yeah.
that stage. But it is possible, I think, to do what you want at some stage. It takes a bit of courage, but work is definitely involved. Is it a lot of work being a journalist? I was speaking this morning to a hairdresser, and I was asking her, what's a harder job, being a hairdresser or a dentist? Because they're both pretty manky, do you know what I mean? Like looking in people's mouths. Or is it hard being a reporter?
It would really depend on what kind of person you are. I always said, like, some people asked me when I was majoring in political science, do you like this major? And every time I just thought about it and said, this is the thing that I hate the least. Yeah. I
sure.
think I hate being a reporter the least. Right.
You're good at hate. I say this positively, but what I mean is you're really good at, and it's funny and it's hilarious, and you rant and you're snarky and you do these memes. I think that's a really interesting part of your character.
Yeah, I'm noticing that a lot of people are telling me with using the word hate. I'm like, is this a wake-up call to become more positive?
No, I like that side of you, actually, because a lot of time there's so much positivity, or there's just, we talked about it earlier, just like profiting off poverty or outrage, like grief merchants, like journalists that will just post the most outrageous stories, and that gets a lot of traction. But you seem to do things with some honesty and humor and lightheartedness, I think.
Yeah, I think I try to. I usually say things in terms of dislike. So if I had to say something that I really like and respect, I love people who don't take themselves seriously, right? That's the thing. Some academia, they get too serious, like for its own benefit. So I would rather see things that don't take themselves too seriously. They just kind of get the point across.
Do you know why academics take themselves so seriously? It's because the stakes are so low. That's why. We still have time for that. What's your take on the academics you talk to? Because you reach out to various academics when you're doing the K-pop, and it's like, I get the impression that to write a story, you have to feature like two voices or two academics to give it some validity or legitimacy. Like, I don't have to do that, right? But it feels like that's what you do as a reporter. Do you ever write without taking their views, or when you do take their views, do you notice something amongst like K-pop academics or Hallyu academics?
I think I also quote a lot of history professors just to get into like where things come from. Luckily, most of the professors I encountered were pretty down to earth, right? And they actually kind of explained stuff. I like to say dumb it down, and I don't think it's an offensive phrase, right? No. I think the most important quality of being a reporter is to dumb it down. Like, you have to make it make sense to people who don't understand it, right? You're not writing a journal, a scientific journal. So I do appreciate experts who kind of explain it in easy language. Well, there's also critics who aren't necessarily, maybe they didn't dedicate their lives to academia, but like they do a lot of research on it. I feel like also to be marketable as a critic, they kind of have to get into this concept. Right? A lot of K-pop artists kind of get into this concept to be marketable. Like, they have to stick to this one thing. There's critics who really made loving BTS their identity, right? And I feel like if you can't say two opposing views against one thing, I think it's not true to being a critic.
Yeah.
But it gets their name across people, right? It makes them very marketable. It gives them a clear list of events they would be perfect to be invited to.
Yeah.
So I do get that. But I would also love to see more people who are critical, but in a not serious way.
I can think of many people you're describing when you say that. And that's been one of my problems with K-pop academia, is that if we were talking about political science, if we were talking about history, if we were talking about colonialism, whatever academic subject it might be, there would be critical takes. And I find a lot of K-pop academia is positive, and it's not critical enough. Just in terms of you would be a good critic, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but my books wouldn't
You
sell.
immediately said yes.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Because I would be a good critic because I'm not saying I would be a good expert. I would just like to see what's not ideal because I'm a very negative person eventually.
But that seems that like critic with a K or something like this.
Oh
I don't know.
yeah. The thing is, when critics, let's say, write something or put out a book, people interested in it are people who want to hear the good stuff, right? People who would agree, like numbers wise, there's people who want a balanced view, but let's say they write a book about BTS and ARMY and how great they are. People interested in buying the book would be people who want to hear how great they are. People who don't take BTS seriously or don't like them, they wouldn't really care about those books in the first place. So just pure marketing point of view, it makes sense to really take a strong stance of loving a group and not say any of the less than flattering things.
Yeah, that's not being a critic, I don't think. I think we're talking about different things. I think you would make a good critic, and I think maybe not in K-pop yet, but certainly in other fields, especially in other parts of the world. And I think South Korea is getting to the stage where, as a post-colonial nation, South Korea had to have this kind of like monumental version of history. It had to do this nation building and bring everybody together because it wasn't really a nation. There's an existential threat of communism and the Cold War and everything. So it's like, we are one people. Okay, our history is great. Okay.
No, actually, our history is so sad. That's the thing.
Yeah, our history is sad and majestic, and our future will be rosy, and that's why we can bear the pains now. But I think it's getting to that stage slowly where it's confident enough to say, this is the bad stuff, and slowly getting there.
Yeah.
Maybe a critic, hot takes.
Yeah.
I want to see your hot takes on your critic hot takes on Olive Youngs and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think a big reason that Kukbong, like just uber nationalistic content, is seeing a lot of backlash from Koreans is also in line with what you said. More people are getting out of that post-colonial mentality and can say something is bad if they think it's bad instead of just trying to save face.
I agree. One of the ideas I give my students is that Korea is not as good as the government proclamations will say, but it's not as bad as social media will have you believe.
Yeah.
The truth is just somewhere in the middle, and that's kind of boring and complex and nuanced. And I don't say that to sound like balance or something like that, but I believe that's what Korea is, that it's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and everything is somewhere in the middle, right?
Except crackheads in the middle.
I mean, I'm sure they're good people deep inside.
Even the one. Okay, this is a new part of my podcast. This is the last question, right? And so this is where I'm going to ask you to give me a question about Korea for the next guest. And you don't know who the next guest will be. It can be a deep question, a shallow question. It could be anything that you want. Give me a question about Korea for the next guest, please, Haley.
Oh, shoot. I have to think about it.
No, you got to come on. I'll keep speaking a little bit more, just so you can think about it. But to just be natural. I mean, you know that I have history professors on here. I have 65-year-old gentlemen. I have young student feminists.
Who's the next guest? Is that
no? That you can't know it.
No.
That's the point.
Okay.
I will tell you. I'm trying to get. I haven't got it, but I spoke to him on the phone. 93-year-old Korean historian, and he speaks English fabulously. He's a beautiful man. He's not going to be my next guest, but that would be the oldest guest I've ever had. 93.
I think I might know him.
Kim Dok-young.
Oh no, never mind.
Okay,
too many
93
too many people
years.
in their
But
90s.
anyway, that was enough time. It's just what I'm going to ask the next guest, and that's how I create some yeongyol between the episodes. And I think it would be fun because it will be a question coming outside of their field of expertise.
Right. I want to ask them. This might be so boring. I want to ask why they think young people aren't having kids. Like because recently I'm not trying to throw shade, but
Yeah.
There was a meeting recently about pitching a story, and we were like, if we want to do a deep dive feature, why don't we ask young women and men why they don't want to have kids? Maybe more so young women, because like statistically they say they don't want kids. And there's a lot of young women at our company, so we were like kind of giving our reasons, and we said, equal treatment in the family, like child care is still thought of as a woman's job, stuff like that. And the seniors are listening and say, no, that can't be it. I think it's house prices. And we say, no, like we're young. if house prices go down, Korean women would buy a house and live alone. And it's more to
That's
do
what
with
they're doing,
it's more to do with them being allowed to have their careers after having kids, and not when both parents are working. Maybe not only the mom has to be called to the primary school when the kid's sick or in trouble, but usually they call the mother, right?
Right.
We're just talking about these social pressures that make them scary. Them scared of being parents, and they're no, that can't be. I think it's because of financial reasons.
But because house prices are suddenly going down for the first time in years.
Yeah.
But for you, it's that, and they didn't quite understand that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't think house price has anything to do with it because it's been a trend for the past 30 years.
Yeah. Can I ask you then? That's very interesting. So, I'm doing a project, and I'm starting it this weekend with Asia Society about Korean people living alone. And there's this narrative that Korean people are living alone and lonely and things like this. And it's like, well, they might be living alone because they like it.
I'm happy
they're-
living alone.
And they're happy. So, why are Korean people living alone? Why is that number like skyrocketing? Because this is a collectivist culture based on interdependence and uri and
Not anymore. I think
Right.
it's changing. A lot of people don't want to attend group dinners 회식
yeah.
after work.
Yeah.
But still, most Koreans live with their parents. I'm just saying, like, it's just increasing, and we're just looking at the change, right? But majority of young Koreans live with their parents until they get married, which is why there's people who live with their parents until they're 50 something. I think, but those who are more independently minded or just don't like anyone telling them what to do, they opt to live alone despite the financial burden. Like me, I would rather pay rent and do what I want to, leave the house when I want to, come back home when I want to without worrying about who I wake up or them worrying, like, why are you out so late? It's a scary world out there. Yeah.
There's narratives about Korea, but they don't reflect the reality, I think. Now, the
Yeah.
reality is people want their freedom and they
Yeah.
like it and they're willing to pay those financial costs for it. Yeah. That's excellent. So the question I have for you is from Dr. Paul. This is the last question. The question I have is from Dr. Paul Youngbin Kim.
Oh.
Kim Youngbin, who is a behavioral psychologist. And he did this. We had this great conversation. It was very short. It was only an hour, but he was explaining beautifully things like Han and Jong, these things that I have a natural kind of hesitation towards,
Yeah.
but from a behavioral psychology point of view, how they're like manifest.
Oh.
And really cool guy. His question, he had no idea that it would be you, but he wanted to ask the next guest, in terms of culture and society, what are Korea's biggest sources of strength and growth?
Oh, wow.
So it's not a particularly like on the nose, but this is kind of your beat, Haley. In terms of culture and society, what's Korea's biggest source of strength and growth? Is it K-pop? Is it video games? Is it something in the culture? Is it the people? Is it the attitudes?
I think everything, the one thing that like encompasses everything you said is discipline, which is so stereotypical. And I say, what is discipline? I say things, doing things that you hate, which is,
Yeah.
and I always say I'm really good at doing things that I hate. I hated studying, although I was like a nerd. I went to Yonsei, right? So a lot of people think, oh, I just love sitting down. I hated it, right?
You're smart AF.
I'm just good at sitting down. I don't want to take that. I don't want to study for that Japanese test, but I'm just good at sitting down and just solving, like taking that book anyway. So I think a lot of it has to do with Koreans' ability or willingness to endure what they don't want to do for like a long-term goal. I think it's also a reason that, maybe less so now, but a lot of people save up money. In the West, it's very common to live paycheck to paycheck, right? Here, it's a lot of people do that inevitably, but saving money was considered a big virtue, which is what basically raised up this economy to this level. So, yeah, enduring short-term wants for a long-term result that they want is what a lot of Koreans have been good at.
Yeah. Like kind of 노력 or 참다, like
Yeah.
effort and bearing something.
Bearing something.
It's fantastic that the Oxford word of the year last year was goblin mode in the West, and in Korea it was katseng.
Katseng.
Right,
Goblin?
so-
What's goblin mode?
Goblin mode is when you just go feral. It's like, fuck this, I'm going goblin mode, right? I'm getting in my pajamas, I'm watching Netflix.
I
and
love
it's
the
just-
word feral. It just speaks to me.
Yeah, it's a very British way of describing your kids, I've noticed. Oh,
Yeah.
You come around, my kids are quite feral, but they'll be all right. And I'm like, it's not really the way to describe your kids, but there is this, you're not just meant to let everything all hang out in Korea. You're meant to get it down. There is this discipline. and
Katseng is all about discipline, right?
yeah, but it just permeates across the young people, the old people, and it's hard, but it leads to success, doesn't it?
Yeah, staying that thin. That's so much discipline required, right?
No, it's removing cheek mass, isn't
Oh,
it?
yeah.
You can cheat the discipline, but
Right.
you have to put in the effort. And I think Korea has made me a more disciplined person.
Right. And discipline
Genuinely.
is just a fancy way of saying doing things I hate because I want to do something I want to achieve something in the long run.
Yeah, that's what I do when I'm a little bit. I don't get stressed or anything, but if I'm ever a bit like, ugh, I do something I hate. I do like bureaucratic university work where I have to file these things, or
Yeah.
I go and exercise. I do something I hate rather than something I like. That's very good for my mental health.
Yeah.
So this has been fun.
Yeah. It's, have discipline or not.
Or not, just be a crackhead.
This is mentally bad for you, but I don't know, fiscally good for you. I don't know.
It's working for you, and I hope it continues.
Is
working
it?
for you. I think so. Like, look at what you're doing already. I couldn't believe how young you were. When I spoke, it was Jeannie Chang, our mutual
Yeah.
friend, that told me. I thought you were like much older than you were. She was like, she's 24.
I've been offered wine on the plane when I was 13.
Is that a good thing? That's a
No, it's just I've
you look old.
I just reached this outward appearance and just never grew out. Stopped growing at 13. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
That's good for you. Yeah. Okay, done.
Yeah.
Relax.
I'm realizing how many times we say the word hate for someone who says let's spread more positivity.
But it's not hateful.
Yeah.